Select Board, November 27th, 2017. We have a 5:45 agenda item. Consideration of town residency when hiring zoning administrator. As background, we met last Monday and there was a discussion and it was voted to continue that discussion just for a few minutes tonight. You weren't here, Fritz. There seemed to be a split in opinions. And through various emails, conversations, sounds like people thought about this topic of whether a zoning administrator who we're about to interview and hire could be from the town or not. So I don't know if people have comments. I have a couple of comments. If you want to speak, I think, why don't I say a couple words? Well, actually, we've started our process. We've actually advertised for a job. We had no restrictions for a zoning administrator. We have received applications, and an application is from a town resident. So if we were to change our process and not allow a town resident, it's kind of in the middle of what we're doing now. And the other thought that came to mind is if somebody lived outside the town and we hired them, let's say one of our candidates is from Brattleboro and we hired him and he moved into Charlotte, I mean, he's got every right to live in Charlotte. So I think my sense is this is sort of a non-issue right now. I mean, if we want to look to years ahead, that's one thing. But I think we're in the middle of the process now. And my sense is we don't have any restrictions on residency. I just want to give that as an opener. You guys have different opinions. We can, talk about it for a couple more minutes.
So I said that at the meeting, that Monday night meeting. If you are talking about not hiring a Charlotte resident of anyone, then you could not let them move into town. And so there's something just not quite right about it. And the other thing that comes to mind over the last few days, we're really limiting ourselves in the years to come because we do want to try to work in our town if you could. And it's really would be based on a person's merits, as I feel, just without question.
Well, since I wasn't here last time, my thoughts would be, I would never want to officially restrict any future choices for any job because you never know what you're going to get. So I wouldn't want to limit the pool. The bigger the pool to draw from, the better off we are. So, and I think if there is any residency considerations, that can easily be handled in the interview process. I said any residency questions or issues could be handled in the interview process. I mean, we get to pick from a pool of people, so.
Right. And a whole big picture. We've had outside zoning administrators that, have their own, everybody has their own way, whether you're a resident or non-resident, so.
It sounds like we're unanimous on considering all applications regardless of residency.
Frank hasn't said anything, but,
Well, I just remember your opinion from the initial meeting.
Peter or Marty, you want to say anything more about the topic?
Dean had sent a couple of opinions from other areas, and I do think that since you've started the process, that it would be somewhat awkward to change it in midstream. I do still think that having somebody in that position who doesn't live in town, in my mind, would be more desirable for the reasons that we discussed, which was that there's, the conflict, the potential for a conflict of interest is going to be greater because they live in town. And unlike being on the select board or being on the planning commission where one can recuse themselves and there's there's plenty of other folks to take up the issue. That's not the case with a zoning administrator.
But I
So I
feel
think-
that we would actually, if that sort of thing did happen, a zoning administrator could step aside and, find someone else who could fit that particular, maybe, I don't know
So I
that for
don't know-
sure, but,
I don't know how that would work as.
and that, we
since
don't
it's
have
only
to
one
cross
person.
that bridge right
Yeah.
now, but, plus a person who lives in town actually knows knows the philosophy or the, our culture, right, and knows, what he's dealing with, has a visual.
Yeah,
When
and
Daryl and Joe came on, I actually felt the need to take them for a drive around Charlotte so that they did have some visual quickly. They've only worked here for a week when that happened. And I think it's really, could be very important to know the town.
I think I agree with that, and I think that's true for the Select Board and the Planning Commission, because as opposed to zoning administrator, in my mind, is really following a set of rules, criteria. It's either yes or no, it's black and white. It either meets the criteria or it doesn't. So I hear what you're saying, and I think that really applies for, again, the Select Board and the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board, to have kind of that broader understanding of the town. But in that particular case, in terms of the zoning administrator, it seems, in my mind, would it be advantageous? Maybe, but I mean, they're guided by the land use regulations, by the zoning regulations. So.
I can see where there may be an issue, but my thought about limiting someone just because of residency, I mean, we may have someone who's been a zoning administrator for the city of New York who's just had enough and left town and decided to move to Charlotte and say, well, I'll do this little job. I mean, someone like that would be overly qualified, and to limit their intent or the ability to hire them if they so desired just because they live here, I think it has to be on merit. And I think if there is, you can read through that when we get to the interviews, I think.
So I think originally I was concerned about a resident being a zoning administrator, and I think, for the reasons Peter said, also Stuart Bennett, who's on the zoning board, voiced concerns. And I think what it boils down to is the potential for a conflict of interest is increased. I do feel my own position has changed to say that it shouldn't be restricted, but I think the concerns about conflict of interest and perceptions of conflict of interest should be, we should have those front and center when we're interviewing and when we're, just after the person's hired, no matter who it is, whether it's a resident or a non-resident. There could be conflicts in both situations. And it's, I think this discussion has been helpful in bringing out what is an important issue, and we fortunately haven't had to deal with it, but it is something that we should be kind of conscious of and on the radar.
So, and when Stuart, I listened to him that day, and I totally respected what he had to say, understand what he was saying. But when I said to him, but then we can't have somebody move in to Charlotte, he looked at me and he went, well, that's another way of thinking about it. I hadn't thought about it that way. And that is a really big factor, it's just, why would we want to restrict ourselves? So thank you.
Okay, so, yes, Marty.
Bringing up Stuart's email recently, which I thought was the right way to think about it, that somebody could easily have great attributes to be the zoning administrator and be a resident of the town. And we might prefer them over all other candidates for various professional skill set reasons. And that but what we're doing is we're acknowledging that there are potential problems with that. So the way to get around that is to create standards and a procedure for getting around that. And that's what we're all feeling vulnerable about. So, but I don't feel like that should be a deal breaker for a new staffer coming into town that has these wonderful attributes and knows the roads or whatever. But that we are missing some procedures, and that if we just had them, it would be fine. So that's my sense of it, is that, yes, you know, hire who you need to hire, but have a way of managing anything that might crop up that could be a problem, you know, in the way, carrying out the job.
Well, we have, as Peter was saying, we have regulations. It's,
The other check and balance that we didn't discuss in the last meeting was if the zoning administrator makes a decision and it's appealed, the select board then becomes involved. And the select board has the ability.
First it goes to the zoning board.
Right, but the select board has the ability, as the elected officials, to either enter an appearance or not. And so has the ability to undo any action that might be the result of a conflict of interest pretty
Well,
quickly,
well,
as
that
far
would-
as the process
That would
goes.
start with the zoning board.
Right.
The zoning board would do that, and if it wasn't rectified by the zoning board, then it would go to environmental court, then the select board would have.
So if the select board feels that there's the right mechanisms in place, then it's a non-issue.
So I think the thing to consider would be, in that case, if it were to come to pass that a Charlotte resident was hired, to your scenario before, which is if there was a conflict of interest, then I think that it would be prudent to have a policy in place that would address that. In other words, if they say, you know, I really can't look at this because X, Y, Z, then either whether it's somebody from the zoning board takes the slot for that, or, but something that's in
Adds
place
comfort.
in the event that there would be.
we have a couple of options because we're using, the guy Lee from, was it Chittenden County? He's here right now, and that's a good point. So we go there, we could take the supervisor, I mean, or after the zoning board, you come to the select board. I mean, there are 2 or 3 options that are available.
Right, because right now, Lee is doing the zoning administrator's job, but at this time, Dean has to sign for everything, so I'm hoping that he is at least looking at things he's signing. Whether he has done any research or whether he just relies on Lee, that's purely up to him, but I'm hoping that right now we have somebody looking over our temporary or interim zoning administrator. So I'm hoping that Dean will continue his looking over at the new zoning administrator when he does get hired. I downloaded this many years ago. It's called the Zoning Administrator's Handbook, and it was in 2005, not too long before I got onto the zoning board. And it has a lot of information in it, and it has a lot of guidelines in it. It goes down to interpreting the bylaws and conflicts. I mean, it goes into, all the things and all the actions that happen for the zoning administrator. But don't forget that this person is also going to be our health officer. And he's going to be our sewage control officer at this time and our E91 coordinator. So this person has to have a wide range of abilities. And one is going to be to make sure that they interpret our zoning bylaws properly and that they can interpret the state statutes that pertain to what bylaws we can enforce and what we can enforce, or what we do have written, what we don't have written. And according to the health statutes and the sewage statutes and everything. I mean, there's a lot to this job. It's not gonna be an easy job. It isn't an easy job, and it's not gonna get any better.
Well, it's technical. And you're pointing out the references and materials that want to be understood and known by this person who's coming on. I mean, being on the planning commission, I know that there's a lot of statute out there that our commission knows nothing about.
Right.
And that we could stand to be more deeply informed about just statute.
Right, and I do that
Stuff
on the
like that.
zoning board a lot. I
Yeah.
actually go to the
Yeah.
state statutes and look at
Yeah.
different aspects of a application, just
Yeah.
to see what the state statutes say,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're going, that our zoning bylaws comply with the state statutes too.
So I think we've had a good discussion, unanimous, as you say. So we have planned at 6 o'clock to go into executive session. I think there's two things we should do. One of them is to look at the performance reviews. You have Nichols, maybe we could make some copies. We're going to look at performance reviews, and I think perhaps we ought to take the time to finalize who we want to interview for the zoning administrator, because we had a few candidates, and it shouldn't take too long. So is there a motion to go in executive session for matters of personnel?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. We should be back in 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Dean was not a participant. I got that wrong. He was not a participant. Well, there's a cover letter, there's a summary assessment, and there's a report itself. I think Rick will walk us through it in a second. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Seconded? All in favor? Aye. No decisions, no actions were taken. So, Rick, welcome. Thank you. Gosh, quite a commendable report as far as the work that Mary has done as our treasurer.
Absolutely.
So as you've done in the past, I'd say spend a few minutes. Let's see, we have about 25 minutes. I have a few questions I wanted to ask just for my knowledge base, because I'm sure everything is correct. Just give us an overview of what you want to say, and then let us ask questions. Mary can ask questions, whatever.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
I am Rick working with Sullivan Powers. We did the audit this year, have been for the last 3 or 4 years now. We began this process a few years ago when I started, and when I came in, one of the things is I've had several conversations with the board since then, during that phase, during planning phases originally. We've met under fraud risk assessments, policy review. So obviously, the amount of time I've spent with the board here has been quite a bit. So I think there's been a pretty good talk along the way of how things are progressing. And Lane's not wrong. Coming into today, just looking at the reports, it sounds like everybody kind of got the gist of them. Sometimes our auditor sometimes goes over people's head. But the gist of the report from the audit, our opinion is an unqualified opinion again. No qualifications needed to be made to the financial statements, and the financial statements are fairly stated as they're put in front of you here. And again, I usually budget, 10 to 15 minutes to go through the management letter, which the management letter is addition to the audit report, which just gives you all the numbers. The management letter is a list of significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, control issues, policy things that we think you should be thinking about, change, things like that. And over the years, we might have had some of those things, but as we worked through them, this year we have no management letter points to report. So the management letter is what we call a clean management letter with no significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. And again, to get to the level where you have an unqualified report and a clean management letter, the board, the management, and Mary all should be commended for coming together and making that happen. Like I said, it was a few-year process to get here, but it's clear that the work that was put into this, and a lot of the work put into the policies, and a lot of work put into procedures and controls has paid off, and and again, to a good report this year. So, obviously, I like to kind of talk about, this financial statement, and I'm looking at the big document now, the thick one. This is the financial statement for the year. A lot of stuff goes into this report. You know, thinking of everything that happens during the years, all the work that goes into, you know, billing property taxes, collecting property taxes, paying out bills, warrants, payroll, looking at, you know, investments, the ups and downs, analyzing that stuff, all the different journal entries, receipts and disbursements that goes into that. This basically is the culmination of what happened during the year. So, you know, again, the process of what goes into this one report, there's a lot that goes into it. So I'd like to start just kind of looking at page 1 through 3. They're labeled on the bottom. This is our auditor's opinion. And again, as I stated as I opened up today, the auditor's opinion, you have 3 choices. You have an adverse opinion, which means financial statements aren't fairly stated. You have a qualified opinion, which means something has to happen to the financial statements for them to be fairly stated. Or you have an unqualified, which is the best you can get. And again, kind of reiterating my point, you did get an unqualified opinion this year again. This document, that 3 pages, is really, that's my bread and butter. That's what I do. You know, the rest of this financial statement, what's in here, really is the result of everybody here, and Mary and Dean, and the work that they do. We do actually help put the document together. We do have towns, you know, with finance directors and stuff that sometimes will do it themselves, and then we just basically are attaching this 3-page opinion. We talked about that. That might be an area where you guys move to at some point, where you can prepare your own financial instead of kind of doing it in conjunction with us. And maybe we'll get there at some point. But right now, again, everything that was put into it, really, you know, the financial statement itself is the responsibility of management and the board and Mary. And all my job is to put this 3-page opinion and tell you how it went. So from there, after those pages, we have the pages 4 through 8. Pages 4 through 8 is the management's discussion and analysis. A few years ago, the GASB decided that sometimes these financials were tough to read. They were very difficult for people to understand. So what they did is they made a requirement to put this MD&A into the financial statements in a much more user-friendly way so that people could read this MD&A and get a better flavor for what's going on in much simpler terms. So if you looked at nothing else in the financials, or if people looked at nothing else in the financials but this MD&A, you'd have a pretty good summary of what's going on with the financial situation in the town of Charlotte. It's just a condensed, easy view look of how things went. I know Dean had mentioned that, and I think in the agenda, at some point the board will approve that. So I think we might talk a little bit more about the MD&A later, but I just wanted to point out what that was as part of this report. So going from there, I'm going to skip over exhibits A and B for a minute. So let's go to exhibit C, page 11. So obviously this is the big thing everybody looks at. This is the first thing we're normally looking at. This is the listing of your major funds and where they sit as a balance sheet as of June 30, 2017. So basically this is a snapshot in time. As of this day, these are the assets and liabilities of these different funds. Again, most times people are focused on the general fund. So I'm going to kind of focus there tonight. The general fund is sitting, you can see in the left-hand column all the way, you can see that, you know, the total assets are $1,874,425. You can see the total liabilities and deferred inflows. And that brings you down to what we call the fund balance number. Where is the fund balance sitting for the town at the end of the year? The fund balance of the town sitting at the end of the year is $283,611. Pretty healthy fund balance, looks pretty good. So, so that I think compares last year, I believe it was like $127,800. So it's up from last year. And we'll go into a little bit on what happened with that when we look at the budget actual. But again, if you're looking at Exhibit C, this is really just that snapshot of time. What are my assets and liabilities of these major funds? The rest of the fund balances for the Highway Reserve, Conservation Commission, the Fire Rescue Capital Fund, those are all listed in there as well.
Let me ask you, the fund
Yep.
balance, that's a target we wanted to have we want to have a positive fund balance.
Yeah.
And you gave us some recommendations. we have a policy, I think it's like 5 to
Yeah, I don't remember the exact policy. you have,
15, but
right.
we're closer to the 5%, so we're in that zone.
You're in that nice zone, comfortable zone. Yeah, and again, a fund balance of what you want to have and what you end up having, they're strictly board decisions. I've been to communities, they don't want a fund balance. They're going to put it right all back into the tax rate. And sometimes that can hurt with cash flow because now you have no leeway, no play. So, I did talk about in prior years, some of the recommendations of 15% of a budget, 5 to 15% of a budget, to have some sort of fund balance there in case, you have unanticipated expenses or revenues are down. So, so you are in that, I believe, in that comfortable zone and not on the high end, but still
Well,
healthy
it's
fund
also
balance.
a safety from the end of the fiscal year to when taxes are paid.
Exactly, yep. And so then looking at Exhibit D, which is on page 12 right after, again, so that's just the income statement showing how we got from the fund balance last year. Like if you're looking at the general fund, you see last year's fund balance, second line from the bottom of 127,842 to now you're up to 283,611. And again, these categories are fairly broad with what came in property taxes, what you spent on general government, things like that. Where you really get the real flavor for how you made money or how, where extra income came in or expenses is in the budget actual in the back. So this is more of a consolidated totals.
Can I ask a couple questions on that
Yep,
page?
sure.
So I'm looking at your page 6 of the color summary you gave us, which are your actually pages 4, 5, 6,
MD&A,
MD&A.
yep,
So so the 283,611, yeah, we got that.
yep.
And then it says the total actual revenue collected were 3,218,223. How come the total revenue connected on your Exhibit D is not exactly that number?
I'm so where are you seeing
Last
that?
paragraph of page 6.
The last paragraph on page 6,
Okay,
it
yep,
says total revenues collected were $3,218,223.
okay,
See that number?
yep,
Okay, so then I'm looking at your Exhibit D, I guess this is, yep. And it says total revenue 3,203,223. Why aren't those numbers the same?
yeah, because sometimes, well, number one, let me just see what you're.
So look at page 12
Yep, I
and
got you.
page 6.
Well, number one, some of it will include the transfers in.
It's, because what?
You'll see it transfers in at the bottom for $15,000. That's the
So
difference.
that is there, because
Yeah.
it was a round number.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yep. So
Okay.
basically, again, think of it as, yes, revenues are up top, expenditures in the middle, but then transfers are at the bottom. Some of the transfers are in and some of them are out. The transfers in plus the revenues get you back to that number.
Okay,
Yep.
that's good. Okay. You also, we're on this page, you talked about, now I'm on page 6 of the MD&A.
Yep,
Payment delinquent taxes, 71,358. Interest on delinquent taxes, 16,161. And penalties, 18,871. Now, that doesn't match, I'm still in the first column of your Exhibit D. It says penalties, interest on delinquent taxes. On Exhibit D, it's 65,034. How come those numbers don't match?
well, number one, I think what we're looking at there, let's see, it says, large portion of which revenues was the payment of delinquent taxes. Well, I think actually, my guess is if you go to the back, like you'll see that, like if you went to go to page 42.
Okay? Yep,
If you look at the top, I think if you look at the top three numbers in the right-hand column, are those your three numbers, I believe? 71, 359?
yeah, close enough, yeah.
Yep. So basically what they're saying is that's the difference between what was budgeted in actual
Yeah.
in taxes. That's what, we budgeted 1,618,000, we got 1,690,000, 145. The difference of that was 71,359. So when you go back to that MD&A, all the MD&A is trying to explain to you is, we got that much extra in taxes above what we budgeted. So it's not really a number that's tied to the revenues, it's more the difference between budget and the revenue total.
But I didn't think, back to Exhibit D, I didn't think that was a budget. I thought those were actuals.
Those are actuals, but what I'm saying is the numbers that you're looking at in the page 6
Yep.
really are more clearly defined in the budget actual, and not in that, because they're all talking about budgets.
A comparison budget to actuals, okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. So, just kind of going on there, the other item I wanted to talk about real quickly was the wastewater fund. Again,
What page?
that's on page 14. So again, that's the snapshot, because it's a proprietary fund, we show this separately, but this is again, that snapshot picture in time of, this is what your assets and liabilities of the wastewater fund look like, with a fund balance of $1,207,468. And last year it was $1,202,810. So not a big increase or decrease. It was up about $4,600 from last year. So pretty much a break-even year for the wastewater fund. But still, pretty healthy fund balance, even net of not looking at capital assets, still look pretty good. So when you look at pages 19 through 41. These are what we call the notes to the financial statements. Again, these will give you more detail on certain items. If you're looking at cash or investments or what debt do we have, the notes to the financial statements will take a number that's in the financial statement and then give you a lot more detail, a lot more breakdown. I'm not going to go through each of the notes because obviously it depends on what you're looking for within the financials to kind of go through the different pieces of it and what makes it up. But there is pretty good detail in there if you're looking for something about what makes up, the receivables or what's making up cash or investments and whether they're FDIC insured, stuff like that. So I just wanted to be aware that those notes are there and pretty clear and understandable as well. The last thing I was going to look at as far as the report goes was the budget actual. Again, the things I'd underlined to talk about was what Lane just brought up, which were the 4 pieces of the revenue that basically made where you budgeted revenues and your revenues over exceeded the budget. And it was, again, property taxes, interest on the delinquent taxes, penalties on the taxes, as well as the Thompson Point rents. You had positive balances over the budgets in all those categories. And really, the only big negative one that stuck out to me as far as the expenses goes was the legal expense where you were budgeting $30,000 and spent $80,000. A lot of that stuff that we're even talking about now is clearly explained in Dean's MD&A. So that's kind of, again, that narrative piece that kind of walks you through the big accounts that show positives and the expense accounts that might have been negative.
So we're getting a refund on one of those expenses, but that's not in this year. So the refund, Charlotte Solar, there was a settlement, I think it was about $19,000.
Yeah.
So that does not show in your accounting here.
Actually, I'm not, off the top of my head, I can't remember that. I don't remember, do you remember if we deferred that, Mary?
It's on page 28, it's up, accounts receivable, 19,680.
Which page, Mary?
28?
Wait.
So it's in there, it's just not.
The 19,698?
Yeah, I think that
To the
is
legal
booked in here then.
But you don't show it like the taxpayers are going to say, well, you're 50,000 over budget. But in fact, we recovered
Right,
almost 20,000 of
Right.
that 50.
right. And
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, that's 19,000 was booked as a receivable and is in your fund balance number for the June 30, 17 audit. So it negates whatever legal expense, not all the legal expense,
Right,
obviously,
but one of
but
them.
helped it, so,
And you received it, by the way.
Yeah, I knew that.
yeah.
We don't miss money coming in.
So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about as far as the audit report. Like I said, the management letter was clean. A couple other just normal parts of the communication that I'd like to go over. To let you know, we didn't have any disagreements with management. We didn't have any difficulties with management. Everybody cooperated with the audit and gave us everything we needed and answered all our questions fully. And so I'd like to always communicate that to the board. And again, once again, I want to congratulate the town and the staff for everything they did to get to this point. So I didn't know how you wanted to handle this, Dean, or, well, I guess I'll start. Are there any other questions that I can answer for people as far as the audit goes? That being
No,
said.
but I think what you've done, like you say, some year we can put the data together, but I think we budgeted to have you're an outside party, I think for the security of the town, the taxpayers, having you put this together is an expense that we've agreed to, and
Yeah.
I would expect we would continue to agree to,
Yeah.
we the board.
Yeah, and again, that's really your call. Like I said, some communities will put the financial together themselves, and some don't. Most don't, especially your size, but the ones with the large finance directors, large, staffing and have finance directors sometimes do it. So, and they have a certain amount of time they put into that, so it's really up to you guys to decide that, so. So like I said, kind of ending off, because I know at some point, I guess you'll approve the audit and the MD&A. We did have that MD&A, and like I said, it was in the first few pages. I don't know, is there anything specific you wanted to talk about?
Not really, just,
To point it out as a
Yeah,
separate document?
right.
Yeah. So when Dean's agenda talks about approving that document, the real key to that is because this MD&A, a lot of it, we kind of help Dean with it, but a lot of it is his wording, trying to explain to you what happened with the numbers in simplistic terms so everybody understands it. And a lot of it is also just kind of going through the different things and telling the reader, what is the government-wide financial statements? What does that mean? The government-wide financials, all it means is we're going to take all that balance sheet we looked at on Exhibit C for all the different funds, and we're going to throw in all the capital assets and all the debt, make those adjustments, and now show you what you'd look like if you were a business. And that's really what the government funds, and that's what it is clearly explained in this MD&A as to what that means. So like I said, really good document to get user-friendly and try to really understand your financial statements. If I was looking at it, I would always start with the MD&A to get a real good understanding of what you're going. And I think this is pretty well written. In kind of answering some of Lane's questions, we can see how it clearly ties right back to the financials.
So explain what the next steps are. So the MD&A is what you've taken as the highlights.
yeah, actually, I think Sullivan Powers puts together the bulk of it. I added in a couple paragraphs describing,
The stuff that you colored
right, exactly.
yellow yet?
But basically it becomes part of the audit report. And so I think the select board can approve the audit report that Sullivan Powers did, and also approve the MD&A, because that's basically coming from you as the management.
Do you have any issues, Mary? Any questions?
There's just one spot in the MD&A where it talks about, under the, it's on page 8 on the separate little thing. It says the town approved a general budget in 2018 for the amount of $3,046,847, which we did, but then we also approved $40,000 for the trails. So our budget is really $3,086,847.
Right.
Okay.
So you recommend it be added then?
I mean, we could put it in or not put it in. It's probably not clearly material to the document and what you're reading, and not,
'Cause
especially
it's-
since everybody knows what they voted in.
There's a standalone article.
Yeah, exactly. But if you wanted to make that change, we could. It's probably not my recommendation to make that change, but it's really, again, your call and Mary's call. What's that?
It's too much printing.
Well, again, it is a lot, especially since we all know what was voted in and clearly explained here in the meeting, and that I don't think it's that material a change, so.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments? So what we're leading up to then is a motion to approve the MD&A that's been put together,
And the audit report.
and the audit report.
Separate motions, or?
Oh, doesn't matter, I don't think.
I'll make a motion to approve the Town of Charlotte, Vermont Audit Report for June 30th, 2017, prepared by Sullivan Powers and Company, as well as the management discussion and analysis for FY17, prepared by the Town Administrator.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Are there any comments regarding this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Really a good job, Mary. Thank you for all
Thank
your
you.
work on this. And the updated policies, internal controls, thank you.
I'll try to get you an A.
We finally, I ran into somebody on my file today, said you deserve an A. Said you did a good job. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
At the number.
Public comment is the next section. Is there any public comment right now? Applicants for the 705 item is applicants for the Planning Commission.
There's two present.
And there are going to be two, is that right? Or
Correct.
There, how many positions?
One right now.
There's one open.
So the two candidates, so one is, said no. So Sean Coyle and William Stuno. Here. What we normally do for volunteer positions, we don't normally have more candidates than we have positions for. So what we'll probably do is ask you to speak for 2 or 3 minutes why you feel qualified, why you'd like the job. And then, let's see how much time we have. We would probably just go in executive session, make sure we're on board, who we think is the best candidate, and then we'd come back and make a motion to approve that person. Does that make sense to the board? Okay. William, would you like, and if you sit in the front, you can be heard on the VCAM process that we have here. So,
Thank you.
thank you for applying, and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like the job and your qualifications.
I'm looking to become involved with the town. We've been here for a little more than 18 months, about a year and a half. I've served in the Planning Commission and DRB format in other communities. Planning is sort of my thing. I don't know how else to say it. I've got a degree in planning and policy, and I've always been involved wherever I've lived in the issues. I didn't grow up in Vermont, but I've lived in Chittenden County for 30 years, so I've been here a long time. I don't know, yeah, I prefer a Q&A format. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to
Tell us
answer them.
about, you say you've been on other planning commissions, what towns, where, how long?
I had 2 terms on the DRB in South Burlington and 1 on their planning commission, and 1 term on the DRB in Shelburne. And I guess if I'm going to mention those, I want to stress, and I mentioned this to Dean when I spoke with him also, you know, coming from South Burlington and then Shelburne after that, I want to stress that I'm in Charlotte for a reason. I don't really want to see our community go the way South Burlington went a number of years ago and the way Shelburne is starting to head the last few years.
So you have thorough knowledge of state statutes, I see.
Have you looked at our current draft of the town plan? Proposed draft?
Oh, any quick comments, or you're saving those for when we have a hearing?
Well, I think it's very well written. I actually went to the last planning commission meeting and I told them that. Certainly, one of my items that I mentioned is Act 174. I'd like to see that incorporated into the town plan. I would really like to see us have firm guidelines for citing criteria for renewable energy. It just makes it easier at the PUC level, and that's something that I'd like to help out with if possible.
You have the availability in the evenings to attend meetings and so forth?
I do. That shouldn't be a problem.
I think we have generally 2 meetings a month.
I have a good attendance record at the times I've served on in the other communities. One thing I'd like to mention, because I know Dean had mentioned this to me, is the differences between a DRB format and a ZBA format. You know, I believe there's been talk about possibly implementing a DRB format here. I personally think that the system we have right now here works fairly well, but if you ever wanted to go to the DRB format, certainly I could help out with that.
Well, your input, if you're the selected candidate, your input on that would be important because you guys know more about it. We're really novices, the lay group that kind of comes and go, and the planning commission tends to have a longer duration of in their assignments.
I know that, you know, the current format here may tax the planning commission members well, but going to a DRB, you need more members, and you also have to make sure that both the PC and the DRB really communicate well between one another.
Any other questions anybody has or comments? If not, thank you for applying.
All right, well, thank you for considering me.
Okay. Sean? Welcome.
Good evening. Well, my name's Sean Coyle, and I will say right off the bat, I have nowhere near the qualifications to be on the planning board that this other gentleman has. I come from a wide variety of places, lived in England, in Canada, and I've been here for 5 years. I love the community, and if there was some way that I could help move things along, I'd be happy to, but I feel rather underqualified in comparison to the other gentleman. I've worked with the government in Canada, in the UK, been on building committees. I'm fairly familiar with committee processes, but I would be rather foolish to say that I would be really as qualified as the other gentleman. However, if you want someone else in the future, I'd be happy to consider it.
Thank you.
I have a degree in civil engineering, never used it. It got me into flight testing in the Air Force and been involved with a lot of really complex technical stuff.
You in the U.S. Air Force or Canadian or?
Canadian Air Force, but I was on exchange with the Brits, and I worked with the U.S. Navy and lots of other foreign countries as well. So.
Anybody have any questions?
What piqued your interest to join the planning commission?
Well, just in general, you know, I believe you always have to give back something to the community you live in, and that's, you know, if I had any skills or talent that would be useful, I think that's why I put the application in.
One thing I was thinking about is grandchildren here in Charlotte, so I was thinking as time goes on, that's a, you know, neat thing to be able to
Yes.
help plan for.
Help them as well, yes. It's a lovely community. I'm really impressed with Vermont. Having never been here before, I met Tricia, and really impressed with the whole ethos of the state. So
Great.
Thank you.
Questions?
We want to make a motion, executive session, just for,
Yep.
okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Seconded?
Second.
Okay, talk personnel, we'll just take a few minutes. Okay, we'll be back in probably 5 minutes or so.
Whole night in the background.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, is there a motion for an appointment to the planning commission?
I'll make a motion to approve Sean Coyle as our appointment for the planning commission.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay,
Second.
any discussions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Congratulations, Sean.
thank you very much.
William, we need you to volunteer. There are going to be plenty of opportunities, and both guys, thanks for applying. Okay. Okay. Municipal infrastructure development policy?
Not ready for that. Could we
Okay.
put that on the next agenda?
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, how to schedule that.
Nope, we're right on time.
We're on the 7:25, we're right on time. A couple minutes early. The next agenda item is a 7:25 item, hire Robert Booher to clean the town hall for $375 a month. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make that motion to hire Robert Boyer to clean the town hall for the $375 a month with a term ending 6/30/18.
You know if he signed? There was, Christina said he might have signed.
Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
It looks like authorizing one person to sign.
Yeah, there's a, you want to authorize the chair? Carrie?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Carries. Budget. The library is here, so to speak. You should come forward and tell me what,
VCAM requests, so that it picks it up on the mic.
so, I'm not clear on what we have for information. What do we have for information from you? This one spreadsheet.
There's a handout on your table that also includes the
like this.
staffing.
That is the staff budget.
Is that the same as this or not?
No, that's just the library staff, the second.
Was that something handed out tonight?
Yes.
I don't see my copy then.
That's it, in your hand, left hand.
This is the,
No, that's the short.
okay, we have one here. Okay. Oh,
That's fine.
we can share it.
Yep, that's fine.
You don't have one either?
No. Oh, look.
Yeah, it's right there.
Coming up on
I
it
think
there.
it's right there.
Okay, right here. Yep, got it. Thank you.
One piece of paper that's
fine.
longer than the others.
Anything that distinguishes.
Oh, is it there?
I need all the help.
Awesome.
We have a lot of pictures. Okay. Why don't you bring us up to speed on
Oh,
what you're
okay.
thinking and what
Well,
the changes and...
We have some changes. I guess I could start with the staff. I followed Dean's direction to include the next step for,
Okay.
as appropriate for library staff members.
Yep.
And then the board had asked me to take a close look at how library staff time was being spent and who might be working what kinds of hours. And that resulted in, so it's a little bit complicated, but, so this is where it says wage, fiscal year 2018, fiscal year 2018, that's all
The
this
short piece of
year.
paper or the long piece of paper?
Long piece of
The
paper.
long one.
Okay.
It
Yep.
says staff budget at the top.
Okay.
Those first three columns after position are all this year's calculations. And
Okay.
then it says next step. The column after that is the hours that everybody is working this year. The column after that calculates if everybody continued to work the same number of hours next year that they worked this year, that's my calculation of what they would get paid per, and then the column after that is their request for changes in hours for
So
some staff.
140 is the current budget.
Yes.
145 if you apply the steps and then
don't
one-
change
And
any
don't
hours.
change anybody.
and don't change any hours.
Right.
And then 153 is
the
if you
change in hours.
change some hours.
And in some cases, for instance, Jenny Cole now works 2 Saturdays a month, and that adds to her hours. She's already working those hours. We are already, of course, paying her for those hours, but we feel that going forward, the budget needs to reflect that she is working and getting paid for those hours. So that's why her number of hours that she works goes from 11 to 16
Okay.
hours. And I think that's, and then Cindy Robinson, the circulation librarian position, it requires a couple more hours of work that she's already putting in. In some cases, I think maybe she isn't even putting down that she is working them, and we need to make sure that she is and that we are paying her for those. And the same for Susanna Khan, who's in particular, in terms of sort of on-call computer services, is we want to make sure that she's getting paid for that.
Refresh me, if I look in the budget here, this is your total budget, so all other expenses are,
This is our staff budget.
Personnel.
yeah?
Then if you look at the shorter piece of paper,
Yeah.
that is the total budget.
Okay. I see. Okay, so you have the other items. Besides staff, you have the other items listed in the shorter piece of paper, okay?
Yes, correct.
And the increase of hours is in the shorter piece of paper?
Yes.
You
that
showed
is
us how you
also-
got
That
there.
is all included, yes, where it
Okay.
says, because it'll say increase and decrease and percent change. The last two columns.
Yep. So the very right-hand column of the shorter piece of paper is the growth in your budget, 4.2%.
4.2, as opposed to last year where we were only 1.4%.
And this will affect benefits for
Nobody.
Nobody.
Well, maybe Susanna,
Susanna.
yeah, by
25
2
to
hours.
By 2 hours.
I don't know, not a huge jump, but she'll go from
benefits,
3/4
insurance is
to.
supposed to go up, what, 9.5% or something like
What's
that? Insurance is,
For 2 hours would be 8%.
well, I meant, okay. Is Blue Cross and Blue Shield's raising their, what, 9% is it, or
Oh,
the benefit package? That's not part of this.
yeah, that's not part of this.
It's a good
Do
thing
we
to know.
ultimately know, when do we know that? I mean, we're going to have the cost of living increase.
You have the rates, yeah.
We kind of know what that's going to be.
You have the Blue Cross rates already.
Is that, it's not,
It's up about 9%.
But it's in the benefits, it's not reflected.
it's in a different
Yeah.
category, okay.
Mary has her hand.
Yes, Mary?
Because of the way that you calculate the health insurance, the increase in the hours to 27 hours, the town covers 90% of that, of the health insurance. instead of 75, is that what it is for 25 hours? Well, it's not even like 75 for 25 because the town pays for the silver plan. And if you choose the bronze plan, then your benefit increases. So you don't get a 75% coverage, you get more like 80-something.
Is the set amount that the town pay based on the silver?
Yeah.
So it pays that certain amount no matter which plan the person chooses? So the employee picks up the difference? Is that the way?
As an example,
Thank you.
the town pays for a full-time employee 90% of the premium
Of the silver plan?
of the silver plan.
That's
Okay.
40 hours.
Actually,
Let's not
30.
even go there.
Yeah, no, I'm fine, keep going.
The bronze plan, for let's just say we're comparing single to single, whatever. The bronze plan premium is less than the 90%, which means that the town pays 100% for the bronze plan.
Understand.
So it's all different.
But if somebody picks the gold plan, which is more than the silver,
Then they have to.
the employee gets, the town pays the 90% of the silver plan price.
Right.
And
So
the-
for
and
the one
the-
example that we have in town of a gold plan, full-time person, that person is not receiving 90%, they're receiving 83%.
Right, because they're receiving the 90%
They make
price
up
of
the
the silver
difference.
plan.
They're
So
picking up the
they pick
difference.
up the difference.
Correct.
And then there's the deductible pay.
Yep. Now, does the town do any like HRAs or HSAs?
All right,
Okay.
you're picking up that baby too.
I just went through this with my work, so.
What's the HRA? I'm forgetting.
It's a health retirement account, or reimbursement account, and then there's a health savings account.
We used to do the HSA, but then that money went to the employee, was fully funded to the employee, and that becomes the employee's money.
Right.
Or the HRA, I just fund the HRA as we need it, and
As
you're
it's being-
banking
As
on,
it's being used by the
you're banking on
employee.
people not using the entire deductible. And it goes back to the town.
Now, does the HRA pay the whole deductible, or is it a partial pay by the employee?
90% of the silver high deductible.
90% of the deductible
If they're for
also?
full-time, it's prorated based on the number of hours.
Okay. Thank you.
Back to the
Anybody
library
other-
budget.
Any other comments on the library proposal?
I'm just looking at the numbers here. I'm trying to figure out the, like, it says approved, and then you've got, it says total assistance, and it has a number of 36,277.80. Where is that number on the shorter piece of paper?
On the shorter piece of paper or the longer piece of paper?
I know, it's on the long one,
Yep.
under
It is.
under FY 2018.
Yep.
Where is it on this upper one?
It is actually a different number, you are right.
No, library assistance is there.
Yeah, but it's a different number, he's right, it's off by about $700, yeah. So my math on the long piece of paper for this year.
This one here, and this one here.
FY 2019 on the lawn is 43,390.88.
Right, but he was
But
asking
he's
about this
asking
year,
about
about
last
the
year.
approved one.
Oh, approved, okay.
Yeah.
Not the request.
No, the approved one. So my math for the fiscal year 2018 was, I missed somebody's hours somewhere. It may be that I had more hours for Mary Jean. I can get you a corrected version.
But in the town plan, or in the, yeah.
It's in the town
In the town
plan.
report,
Yeah.
it would show the actual that was
Yes,
approved.
what was voted on it.
So that's the higher number
Yes,
in the
because I took-
shorter spreadsheet.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Good to see an energy decrease.
Yeah, substantial.
Nice roof.
Oh, the roof may,
It's because of the roof and also because a couple of people in town have donated their solar access
credits?
to the
Oh, wow.
library.
Yep.
Nice.
So
Great
that
donation.
actually helps quite a bit. So it's something everybody can do if you want.
I have a whole dissertation about that one.
Okay.
no further comments? So we put this in the grand plan.
Okay.
We'll have the cost
Shake
of,
it and see what comes out.
we'll have the cost of living at CPI will come out, which, like I said, looks like it's close to 2%. So that'll come out early January, and we'll roll this up into the full budget, and we, the select board, will look and see where everything stands. But good proposal.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Here.
Are you expecting more folks, CVFRS?
Are we a couple minutes early?
We're a little bit early. Okay.
We can do minutes if we want. You have more folks coming from fire and rescue? We can do minutes then. Thanks. We have October 9th minutes.
I wasn't here.
So Carrie and Matt weren't here. Is there a motion from the attendees to approve the minutes of October 9th? Which would be Frank,
Yep,
Fritz,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 9th
as me.
as amended.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Good. No comments?
No.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Lee?
Yes.
I wondered if you wanted to do the computer server while Mary's here. That's the 8:30 item.
Oh, we could do that. Yeah, want to just go back to that then? Let me get my notes. If I can find it. So we've had the rep from SimQuest here a couple of times. And there's been a discussion about having our data on the cloud versus having the system located here in the town hall, which is what we currently have. And the cloud, I would say, is sort of the way people are going. And with the cloud, you get automatic updates because of the cloud. There's 3 locations throughout the United States. Equipment's updated all the time, so we would never have updates. That would cost above and beyond the budget. Whereas if you have it on premises, the computer system has a finite life, 5, 6, 7 years. So there was a discussion, Mary came in the last part of it, and talking about the cloud, and one of the things that came out, on the cloud, the internet has to work because you're working on the internet as compared to our in-house service, you're not dependent upon the internet. The library has Comcast. We have the Waitsfield telecom system here. So the action would be for us to take, if the board wants to look at the cloud, to take the first step, Dean, is that right?
Right, yep.
To weigh in and have the engineer from SimQuest take a preliminary look. And then the next step would be a detailed look, which would cost $3,000. But that $3,000 would be applied to either the cloud services or the premise service would get applied to that cost. It's a little more expensive with the cloud, but not upfront. Over time it is, but you're getting all the updates. So I don't know how people feel. Seem to be a consensus, those that listened, the cloud might be the way to go, but we need to do a little research of which is more reliable. Do we want to take the Comcast cable and have it extended that the library uses? Or do we want to take a look and see what the reliability is at a GMAVT? And that's all part of the work that gets done here. So I guess our action is just to say there's an interest in proceeding to compare the two. Is that all we have to do? We're
Right.
not committing money
Right.
at this stage.
Nope.
NIMRIC is mostly online, isn't it? That's not through our server. But their stuff is in their servers.
But they have Limerick,
Nemrick.
they have NEMRIC on the system. Other towns like Virgins has the cloud, right? Was that,
Right, the data is in the cloud, the software is, well, the software is in the cloud as well, I guess.
There's
in
a
there.
difference.
Yeah. It's not
You're
NIMRIC's.
not purchasing the cloud,
Not Ni-
NIMRIC version.
Right, not NIMRIC's cloud, it's SimQuest cloud.
well, you,
Okay. Our data is going to stay the same where it is, how it is. It's just the server, whatever. I'm not a very technical person.
So basically you're gonna log on to,
I'm going to do the
you
same
log
as
on
I
to
always do.
NIMRIC online
Yes.
and do your calculations, put all your information in, and then save a copy of the information here. Is that what you're?
Or with NIMRIC, they do a
So you
backup.
use the web-based version of NIMRIC
Not right now,
No.
versus cloud-based?
Correct.
Yes.
web-based.
It's just, what she's talking about is the storage. So where is it stored? Is it stored on a server here? Is it stored on a server?
and that's what we're being,
off-site.
that's what we're looking at.
Because the storage is different than how you interact with different software programs.
Right.
Well, I think the interaction is the same. It's the reliability of the internet versus having it right here in the room, is what we're told.
Well, would you be able to pull up your information if the internet goes out? Would you be able to, if your information is saved on the cloud, you cannot start your program and and recover all your information?
You're going to have an interruption in your, whatever you're trying to do, if you're using the cloud and your internet goes out.
So are all the desktops now hardwired into the server?
Yep.
Are all the desktops hardwired into the server? Because if they're not hardwired, that's how you communicate into the server anyways. is through
Well,
the internet.
We have a local network. They're all going directly
well, they have
to
the local
server.
Wi-Fi, which hooks to the,
Local Wi-Fi is also in
It's not Wi-Fi. We're
no,
not,
yeah,
the
yeah,
loc-
but no, you
No.
don't need to have the internet to have your local Wi-Fi. I've had,
Local means the other room.
right, but I mean, we're sending out a Wi-Fi signal from our computer room back here. So if the internet goes out,
I can have
Mary
it
can
on
go
my
in and she can get her information just because even if her computer, if she had a laptop here or whatever, or I could with my tablet, I get online here and I can access my email and stuff through the Wi-Fi.
but that's not how all the machines, that's not how
How
staffs.
frequently do you lose your internet? Because the library has Comcast, we use Comcast.
They actually, library, just correct, I talked to Margaret about that. They have both Green Mountain Access and Comcast. They use them, one for, it sounds like actually they use Green Mountain Access primarily and Comcast as a backup. So it's, that was different than what we discussed before, I think. So I can't say that there's actually primarily Comcast over there. What was the fire station?
We use exclusively Comcast, and of course, we're 24/7.
And there haven't been any interruptions or complaints or concerns about data?
I mean, my look at this, to get down to the bare bones of it, is it costs about $6,000 a year more to be on the cloud. Because this is saying that it's going to be for the total, estimated total monthly cost is $1,417 for the server based and $1,936 for the cloud service base.
Right.
So you're talking almost,
But you don't pay the $22,000
that's on,
capital costs. There's a $22,935 capital cost with a server here, whereas the cloud server capital cost is $10,000.
But the cloud is twice as much monthly cost.
So the increase of the monthly cost is
Is 6,000, according to Frank's numbers?
well, that's upfront cost.
right.
So you take 2 years, you've made up that money. The difference. Because you're talking $10,000 for cloud services and $22,000 for a server here.
What he's done is he assumed, if you look at the top half of your piece of paper, he assumed we're going to finance the premises, which is the $22,935, the other numbers. And if you finance that for 60 months, it's $518. If you finance the cloud, it's $242. So then he brought those numbers down to the monthly operating expenses. So the 518 is brought down into the monthly expense, and the 242 has been brought down. So to your point, that makes it apples to apples. So if you compare one number to the other, it is $500 more per month for the cloud, but the cloud never goes obsolete, whereas the investment of the capital cost for the on-site is obsolete in a period of time. Whenever, how often you want to get a new computer, 5 years, 6 years, that kind of thing.
When you need a new server.
New server. So that's why we're looking at it now, because the software is not current anymore, hard to
And
replace.
how long has it been since the server was replaced?
2011.
2011?
Did he say if the 10,698 upfront capital cost for the cloud, is that a one-time fee?
Yes.
So in 6 years, you're not paying any of that, you just keep on going?
Correct.
However, they can raise their rates in 6 years too.
See, what it is, if you look above on that column, Fritz, says professional service for migration, $450,000. Professional service, new server. So that's labor. The $10,698 is essentially the labor to put everything on the cloud.
But once you're there, you're there.
Once you're there, you're there.
In less than 6 years, we decided to go back to an on-site server.
Right,
We have-
right.
Okay.
Well, pretty much, but after 5 years, once you pay for this, you're still, I still ain't, not that you wouldn't have to put another one in and maybe do another server again and do it all over again, but the thing is that the cloud is gonna be this, I mean, you're gonna save the $10,000, I guess.
But
But you're gonna pay for that with the 1936 per month. I don't know, I'm still, I agree with looking at the, getting a preliminary look at doing it.
Is that all we're asking tonight then?
Yep.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Sorry to keep doing this to you, Lane. A couple numbers jump out at me. So under the estimated IT capital costs, if you go down to where it says professional services, installation of new servers, migration to new servers.
Yep,
It's 13.5 and 67.76.
yep.
Then the next line is professional services again, which talks again about migrating it and onboarding it to the data center. So is the 4,500 already included in that 6776 number, is a question I would ask. And if not.
No, it's an additional charge.
But why do they have to migrate things to the new servers twice at almost an equal cost? I'm just throwing that out there.
One is for the data centers. I think it says here, the 4,500 is the migration to the SimQuest data centers. That's the 4,500. Then migration to new servers,
From the old server?
I guess
Right.
from the old server is the
So
6776
the
number.
6776 would be the migration of in-house into our own new server or to the cloud server?
Well, it depends which column you're under.
Well, if you're looking at the cloud services, I mean,
I think the cloud is the 4,500, the SimQuest data centers, and that's why it's not applicable for the other option, because the other option isn't going on the cloud.
Right.
So then the question is, Matt, the 6776, should that be non-applicable when you're talking about cloud service because it's on the line item below it?
We can ask for clarification.
That's, I'm just saying, those numbers jumped out at me, it's like, well, why
I don't think
is
it's a
it-
mistake. We talked to them quite a bit. I mean, I can't defend what it is they do, but it's not a mistake.
Okay.
I think the big,
Under the monthly operating costs, it just seems interesting that the cloud-based is $1,000 more a month for the same number of users.
No, that's where you're looking there.
693
The first
versus
line.
1694.
the top line of the monthly operating
Oh.
expenses, no,
So you would think
Right
that their
here.
safety net services would be the same regardless of which platform you're using.
There's the additional backup, $95 for backup for the on-premise, which would be included in the safety net.
You know, if there's an interest, what we ought to do is proceed and then have the fellow here to answer. Because he does this regularly. I don't think there's mistakes in his spreadsheet, but we're not qualified to answer the questions.
I'm not saying there's mistakes, it's just those numbers just seem suspect and you should actually tease it out a little bit more
Okay.
and ask them what's included in those numbers and why.
Also, what I'd like to ask him is the monthly financing. There must be an assumption of interest, and that's something the
He
town.
did that only to make it apples to apples, so they're both the same. Whatever he selected, it's 3%, 4%, they're both the same, so you could have apples to come up with a monthly cost. I mean, we were thinking maybe we would pay upfront some of the costs of the $10,698, which is the capital cost. We have some budget money, I don't know if it's exactly that, we may want to pay that off and not even
Pay interest.
not pay
Finance.
interest, right, for 60 months. And then that would lower that, but This
Would it
is
be
an
the
apples-to-apples comparison.
Same difference. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, except for the cost of the server, what's the benefit of the cloud services?
It is always updated. It has a very, very low downtime. It's 26 minutes per year. They have 3 sites around the US. They update on a regular basis. We don't even know about it, but it's always current.
Did we get,
Because we have Barracuda cloud backup now.
do you get off-site accessibility if it's in the cloud?
No, I don't think so. Because you have these 8 seats, it said someplace, that would be 8 users, so the answer I think is no.
So those users
Unless they took
now
their,
have to be into the,
They have to be logged in.
logged in
yeah.
here. As opposed to if a user's used a laptop instead of a fixed computer, they could take their laptop home and log in?
I would assume so,
Yeah.
since it's cloud-based.
Yeah.
they would
If it's
do-
cloud-based?
Yep,
If they have the proper system, okay.
yeah, internet.
It was only 8 seats,
It's the-
but that would have the same
Doesn't have to be
password.
here.
It does not have to be here?
No.
Okay, correction on that one.
So
Yes, Mayor, you had a,
are they're hardwired, the
No,
the
there's a
server
lot.
here,
Right,
it's to an individual computer.
right.
So that person can't use their account on a different computer in the building?
You can log in on a different account in the building,
But you're in the building.
right in the building.
So you don't have to use the same machine. Your account
Right.
moves around the building, whereas if it's online, it moves around and
Right, there's some things you can do
The world.
off-site, like email but not
certain things.
certain
yeah.
data that
It's
is
set up that
located
way.
here. Yeah,
But if it was on a cloud, any employees should be able to do this access their account from wherever they are.
yeah. You never see us. No, it's good.
so do we need a motion to have them continue studying, or is it a consensus from the minutes? Huh? I still can't hear you.
I said, wait.
She has a
It
question.
just seems like there's a lot of questions. Maybe you would like to have him come in
Okay.
and answer all your questions all at once, and then make the motion that you
Okay.
think that you want to make.
Fine. So why don't we schedule that then? That's fine.
So the second part of this, and maybe we're over, we could do it later, but is the extension of the warranty for 1 year that allows us to explore these options.
So the current warranty runs out when?
December, mid-December,
So we should do that regardless, right?
probably.
It sounds like we're going to do something. So this is just the extended warranty to maintain the system that's in place.
I'll make a motion to extend the warranty for our current server for $465 for 1 calendar year, starting 12/22/17.
Say that date, 12/22.
17.
Is that seconded?
Second.
Any comments on that? All in favor? Aye. Okay. So we'll bring them in and have them talk to all of us. That'd be good.
Since we all have questions, I mean, these had a couple of meetings, I made it to one, but I went south for the second. Is there any chance of getting them here when we can all be here?
He lives in
Oh, it would
Williston.
be an evening meeting, I'm assuming.
He
Yeah,
lives in Williston. He says it's not difficult to get here.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Back into the budget, 8 o'clock item, fire and rescue. What's your plan, folks?
Tom Cosman wants to be called.
Okay,
He has the phone number.
I have that.
Okay.
It'll be on a cell phone. He'll hear,
He'll be on his cell phone too.
okay.
He got stuck
He's
in
stuck in an
Ohio.
airport.
If you were to sit in the front row there, then everybody could probably hear better.
Kath, do you need introductions to who's who? Or do you want to know who's who? Do you know? Could you just announce your names quick so minutes can reflect? Sure.
Kevin Romano.
Meg Gilbertson.
Okay. Okay, we're ready to go then. This is Tom. So, speaker, loud. Hi. Hi, Tom, you're here. This is Blaine. Selectboard's here, all five of us. And good. Kevin, Meg, Dick, and Patrice are here on the front row.
Excellent.
Hopefully you can hear.
So far, so good. Can you hear me all right?
It's fine.
Okay, great.
We're on max volume and it's just a little old iPhone. Our normal system we use isn't working. Okay, so we haven't started yet. So would somebody like to lead us through the budget?
I'd like to start off, if I may. First off, I apologize for not being able to be there physically. I'm actually in Cincinnati. My son got married over the weekend, so we had a big event, but we had some problems at the airport earlier this afternoon, and there was just no way to get back. So anyway, thank you. I'll do my best, via speakerphone. I guess, what I was hoping to do is just spend a couple of minutes looking at the big picture. I think we worked, very hard trying to put together a budget that allows us to deliver the essential effective services and yet is fiscally responsible. I pay taxes in Charlotte. I know, most of the people sitting in that row pay taxes in Charlotte, so this matters to us. You should have, hopefully everybody has a few different handouts. One would be a narrative, this fiscal year 19 proposed budget narrative. The second one would be a management financial report. And then the third one would be the sort of detailed operating budget. Obviously, we've got a bunch of good people in the first row that can help answer questions, and we plan to get into the detail. And when we do, obviously, we've got plenty of resources there to carry the discussion. But before we look at the handouts, if I could just maybe have you turn those over for a second, please. From a big picture standpoint, obviously we're going to talk about operating budget for FY19. We're also going to talk about capital needs. And as far as the operating budget is concerned, we essentially came up with three. We had an option A, an option B, and an option C. And what you're holding in your hands there is option C. As you look at it, the biggest determinant that creates budget variations there really are two of them. One is rescue payroll and the assumptions that you make around rescue payroll. And the second one is of course, like everybody else, is health insurance. From a big picture standpoint, the thing that I want to, kind of have us all remember, and I'm sure most of us do, but is that the MOA itself calls for paramedic services. And keep in mind that, from a rescue perspective, every week there are 28 shifts. And currently those shifts are filled by 2 full-time, and the rest are done on a per diem basis. Over the last year and in this year, in this fiscal year, our model is essentially to guarantee 6 of those 28 shifts to be paramedic, at the paramedic level. And I remember the last time, the very last meeting that I attended, I think we got briefly into a discussion about, does the select board have a really solid grasp of what is paramedic versus EMT, and so on. And we've certainly got people in the first row that can get into the significant differences. But so as it stands now, we strive to guarantee, we guarantee 6, we strive, and almost virtually all the time hit 9 paramedic shifts. But when you think about it, that's 9 of 28. It's essentially less than 1/3 of all the shifts are staffed at the paramedic level. And so option A, which you don't have, but I'll tell you briefly about it. Option A was to add a 3rd full-time paramedic and plan for actually 12 paramedic shifts. That is to say 12 of 28. So roughly 45% of what goes on during the course of a typical week would be staffed at the paramedic level. I think the fundamental question is how many paramedic shifts does the town want in the course of a week? If we go to an option A, we're essentially talking about a town appropriation of $699,014, 699,014, which represents a year-over-year budget increase of 12%. So that's option A. It takes us up to not half, but approaching half of the shifts being conducted or able to be conducted on paramedic level. Option B, which you also don't have, but just to give you a brief feel for it, is overall it's an 8.7% increase in the operating budget. It translates to an ask of the town of $674,981, and it essentially is status quo on rescue personnel. But actually, we're actually budgeting, and this is true of option A and B, we're actually budgeting this year for what we've always paid and what we're required to pay, but we're actually putting it in the budget, and that is things like holiday overtime pay, holiday pay for the full-time people, and PTO for permanent staff. So option A was to go to 3 full-time as a means of attaining and achieving 12 paramedic shifts out of 28. Option B is keeping it at striving for 9 and virtually all the time hitting 9 paramedic shifts. And then that brings us to option C, which you do have in your can, which is, again, status quo as far as rescue staffing. It translates into a 7.9% increase in our operating budget. Implicit in that option C is, and I think this is a big point because I think we looked hard at this. Transitioning from Blue Cross Blue Shield to MVP. I did a bunch of due diligence on MVP. This is the first year that they are bolting on Cigna's national network of physicians. They would essentially offer the same deductible, the same copay, the same out-of-pocket maximums, and so on. Obviously, it means going from a PPO to an HMO. However, as I said, in doing the due diligence, even doctors out of state, which was an issue for us, are contained in their network. And, the bottom line on this, though, it's a 7.92% increase in our operating budget, and it translates down to a $669,324 ask of the town. there were I think it was a total of 3 other line items to go from option B to option C that we made reductions in: fire, dry hydrant maintenance, a little bit of reduction in the training budget for rescue, and I think there's one other that's not coming to mind right now. But so it's kind of an ABC approach, but again, to me anyway, and to several of others on our board, the fundamental question of how many paramed shifts should be contained in a given week, and given the fact that paramed services are indeed in the MOA, but they're not spelled out specifically, I'd be interested in everyone's thoughts on that. So those are sort of my introductory thoughts at this point, and I'll pause there.
Well, we really haven't talked the paramedic issue for a few years. When the MOA was being put together and there were some issues across the street, it was challenged a bit by some of the residents, taxpayers, but nothing was really changed. And we, the Selectboard, who, approve your budget, we've just been supportive of your recommendation for paramedic coverage of this 7 of the 28 shifts, which, if I remember, I think these are daytime shifts where you've averaged out the most likely probability of needing a paramedic. So we've accepted your recommendations, and we really haven't, in the last 4 or 5 years, even gotten into the topic. We've spent more time challenging the bottom line, the percent growth in your budget, and back and forth on that. And we've been satisfied, or more than satisfied, for the service, because we have a debate like we're doing right now, but it comes time at the town meeting. There's tremendous support for what you guys do, and to date, the budgets have been approved.
Right.
So, Tom, when we talk about, or you talk about 28 shifts, that's actually people. So there's actually 14 crew shifts per week, right? 7 to 7 during the day and 7 to, so of those 14 shifts, how many of them are you going to have one paramedic at least that shows up on that shift? I think 9 out of 28 sounds like only 9 times out of 28 is a paramedic going to be there, but that's not the way it works, is it? So there's actually, of those total 14 shifts, because there's 2 people on a shift, 9 of those 14 are going to have.
So right now, you're guaranteed to have 6 out of the 6-day shifts covered with a paramedic.
Okay.
The other 3 additional shifts are per diem. We have 1 per diem medic who's on military leave for the next 6 months. And the other paramedic picks up 1 shift every other week, which is a Wednesday night. So really, you're only getting 6 paramedics 1 week shifts, and then 7 the following week, and then 6 and 7.
So the 20, just step back a little bit, just for definition. So you have 12-hour shifts.
Correct.
Times 7 times 2 people, that's the 28.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think one of our biggest challenges in our district is attracting new paramedics on a per diem level to this district, because they have to go through a probationary service period with our medical advisor at the hospital.
Right.
And it's a little bit of a cumbersome experience. We usually have to pay to send the person to another service to get the calls during the day to meet the requirements. Some paramedics need 10 shifts, some need 20, depending on, or not shifts, excuse me, calls. that are then, they check them for quality assurance, they go over it with the medical director. So it's a process to get a new per diem paramedic in the door. And that's true for the rest of the district. It's just, it's not so easy to just pull another paramedic on for a per diem shift. It takes a bit of work.
Right. They kind of give you like a breakdown of how the paramedic works. We are the only paramedic service in the general vicinity. South of us is Middlebury. We know how far that is from here,
Different district.
which is a different district. And then above us, we have Colchester, Essex, and Richmond that can provide paramedic services to assist us if we have a paramedic need when we're running an advanced EMT level service here. South Burlington and Burlington are not providing intercepts to anybody other than Shelburne for South Burlington only, and Burlington only if you're within their city limits. HealthNet is, at this current time, not providing paramedic intercepts. So you may have to wait for a paramedic from Richmond, Essex, or Colchester if you required a paramedic in town for something if we're not at that level.
But back, kind of back to my point, we, speaking for all of us, I mean, there've been no complaints. I mean, what you're doing is good. So, don't want to negotiate against ourselves here. The service you provide is good. How do we get the best budget, the best dollar for the taxpayer? I don't think we're here to suggest more paramedic service. I mean, if we get, it could go the other way. I'm not sure we want to go there right now.
Yeah, I think right now we're falling just a little bit short on the paramedic coverage that would serve the community to the best based on the calls or when we see the most frequent calls. With 2 guaranteed paramedics at the 6 guaranteed shifts, I think based on when we get our calls, it would be, having 9 would be, that would be perfect. But I hear what you're saying.
So,
And I guess if I could
hear what you're
follow
saying.
up with that, from your experience in this past year, how many times has a health outcome been less than it could have been had we had more paramedic
Well, the
coverage?
thing is, they're not calling for the paramedics because it's such a far distance away, unless they're like really critical, where a paramedic on scene
I
right
guess,
away.
I mean,
Right.
transports that you've
So-
done with residents.
Right, so I'm talking about residents in town. So right now, our higher call volumes are in the day. And right now we have coverage from Monday through Saturday day shifts. Right now, our busiest nights are Friday night, Saturday night, and then obviously Sundays are not covered with any paramedics at this point in time. As far as townspeople looking at the types of calls we get, if anything cardiac comes in, it really should be a paramedic level because we have the ability to interpret 12 lead EKGs and provide anything from life-saving medications to change your heart rhythm or defibrillate your heart while you're still alive and talking, and depending on the type of call we come in contact with our patient care. So we're not really able to provide.
I guess my
have
question
to
is more
run
of
that.
an experiential one. In the last year, how many health outcomes would have been?
I would have to run more data on that,
I don't know if we have that right
Okay.
now. We
but I don't
can
have
get
all
it.
that information. We can definitely get that through the QA program.
Yeah, I'm
Find
just
out.
thinking, do you have discussions and debriefings where you say, you know what, this happened this week, and we really needed a paramedic there and they weren't there? And has that come up this year?
Since I've taken over as the rescue chief, I have met with the crews very closely on the calls. I do monitor all the calls that come through, whether through the active 911 system, and I usually, if I see anything cardiac, usually I'm following up with my crew on that. And most of the time they said if there had been a paramedic in town, they would have used that. But they're not gonna wait for Richmond to show up. They're gonna load and transport to the hospital quickly.
Right.
And we're not gonna sit here and wait.
Time is also.
Right, exactly.
But we can get you that information.
Just out of curiosity
Yeah.
for, thinking
And
about
I can
the
break that
future.
down to like cardiac calls where a paramedic should be on cardiac types of runs. And I can break that down for you with
Yeah,
numbers and
and I think
percentages.
also, every year the Fire and Rescue does a presentation at town meeting.
Right.
It might be a nice kind of thing to present.
Definitely.
If I could just interject here, I think that it was the board's overall view at this stage that option C was the option that we wanted to put forth to you folks. That's obviously why that's what you've got in your hands. On the other hand, I thought that it did make sense to get your view on what do you think the town wants in terms of paramedic coverage, and would the town have an appetite to have more if they really understood, if there was enough education out there so that they could understand the differences. But as you see, you've got option C in your hand. We're trying to be sensitive to the math of this, and we took some big steps, I think, particularly with the health insurance area, to show just how serious we were about being responsible in terms of the numbers. So I don't know where you want to go with it, Lane, but I'm wondering if at some point there's some way to measure the town's view on paramedic.
One way, we could take a straw poll at town meeting and just a show of hands, and after a presentation, I think it's a great thing to be thinking about, and I think the question is, what is the best way to gauge that? We've had limited success with SurveyMonkey. Front Porch Forum, I think you get a sampling of people's views, but not necessarily a large representation. A lot of people just don't want to make their feelings on a given issue public on Front Porch Forum. But I think at town meeting, we could get a good cross sample of 100+ people, and after an informative kind of presentation where people get a chance to weigh it.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I think I had a little bit of a vision, a similar vision along those lines, there's no better opportunity, frankly, to get a sense of what people do want. Better than that. So I think we would certainly want to take advantage of that if possible this year, this coming March or whatever. So.
Which would affect a budget process 12 months from now.
Sure.
Right.
And a planning process.
The planning, for future planning, you have new leadership. I mean, it's a good time. I don't think a survey's been done in recent years. So I think that's a good thing to do. There was like I said, quite a debate a few years ago, but it kind of went away. And this would create a refresh look at that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry.
so I'm just trying to look at the budget, 7.9%, 7.92.
Right.
Pretty significant increase. What we look at, what are the changes? You talk about health insurance going down, and
It doesn't go down, it goes up.
but
Obviously, had we, for option C, if we had stayed with Blue Cross Blue Shield,
yep,
that would be up much, significantly more. As it stands, it goes up because status change. We have 3 insureds. We now have 2 families and 1 individual. So it goes up in part because, before this year, or before, we had only single coverage, I believe. We only had 1 family, and this is anticipating 2 family coverage. So I think, in large part, because we're quoting here MVP's rates, the increase is as a result of transitioning to 2 families as opposed to just 1. And that overall increase is about, let's call it $8,400, $8,500. Another significant, if you look at the fine numbers, the fine print under the more detailed operating budget, another one of the significant increases would be in overall EMT payroll.
right, I'm looking at that.
Yeah, that's simply a function of, this is the first, really this is the, although we've paid it in the past, it was never formally in the budget. We now, and Patrice is there, she can elaborate on this, but we are now reflecting in the budget actual, anticipation of holiday overtime in anticipation of holiday pay for full-time and actual PTO for permanent staff, which we've always paid, but just never reflected in the budget until this passed. There's some other increases. I think the last time I was there, there were questions about the phone system, the phone numbers. There were, I should say, telephone. There were questions about dues and subscriptions. Patrice, Patrice is there, correct?
Yeah,
Patrice, could you elaborate a little bit on the dues and subscriptions?
And the telephone?
Sure. So the dues and subscriptions, most people think about it as the newspaper, association fees, things of that nature. Our dues and subscriptions are different in the fact that the majority of our systems are cloud-based, so those are subscription services to us. They encompass everything from our scheduling, our payroll, active 911, which has replaced pagers to some extent. So if we were sitting here and the tones went off, all of our cell phones would go beep, beep, beep. And it's an interactive, so you see where the call is, what the nature of the call is. You see who's responding as far as personnel and what apparatus are going to the call, and whether or not it's fire and or rescue or just rescue. Every single staff member and volunteer has this on their phones. There's also some that are on desktops. So each one of those is a subscription service. So every time there's some changeover, we reissue that particular subscription, so it's not an additional.
And when someone leaves, it no
We
longer
just
goes
recycle
to
it,
them.
correct, exactly. So we automatically take them off the subscription and then we reissue it to the next person.
So for example, I have one of those on my phone. So if I happen to have gear in my personal vehicle, I can go directly. It also enables people that are smart enough, like at Devon St. George, for example, if we have an issue, for example, like a substantial propane leak, and we know that one of the ways to dissipate propane gas is, with water. Devon can go on that system and calculate the distance from, how much distance do we need to be able to cover with hoses, and know the amount of footage of hoses on the truck, and figure out what apparatus needs to come in order to have enough hose to get to the point where we need them. I mean, these days you just sort of can't be without this stuff, and so many of the other agencies, if you will, that we interact with have this, so we have to, in order to be able to communicate, we really have to be up to speed, so to speak, technologically.
The Active 911, we were one of the driving forces behind it. It's phenomenal what we can do on it. On the way to the scene, I can pull up your house. The officer can pull up your house on the tablet. He can measure the length of your driveway, know if I've got enough hose on the truck to lay 4-inch all the way down your driveway. I can look at your house, I can pull it up enough on Google Maps from Active 911 to see your house, to know the size of it.
You can see the fire pond.
To see the fire pond.
And see where the closest dry
And
hydrant
all the
is.
fire ponds,
Yeah.
the dry hydrants are listed on this, so our mutual aid coming in, they'll know where the nearest hydrant is to hit. The technology is there.
Well, it's a large percent increase, but it's still a pretty small number. It seems
So
highly
the other
worth
things
it.
that are in there are emergency reporting, which is the fire side of the house. The rescue side of the house uses EMS's schedule for a lot of theirs, and siren elite.
The emergency reporting, also we have our maintenance lists on that.
All our inventory.
All our inventory's on there. That's how we're able to give you a better inventory than we ever were over the last 30 years, because everything is listed. It's on what truck it's on. You know it's marked. You know its serial number. You know when it was purchased. You know when it's coming due to be replaced. So it's a much better handle on what we are doing.
All the apparatus maintenance is captured there too, so if you want to, when we get to the point of replacing a piece of apparatus, you can say, okay, what has been the maintenance history on this.
So is
And
this,
it's been issued.
is this discussion account number 53306? Is that the one?
This is still all dues and subscriptions.
51006.
There's also,
5100, okay, there you go. There too.
There's also
Not
a
particularly big numbers.
subscription that we pay so that the defibrillators communicate with the hospital, so there's a gateway that is included in there. Dropbox, our financial accounting is a subscription
Why
service.
did the telephone go up 1,800?
Some of that is because that active 911, there are tablets in each one of the apparatus, and they're also used for GPS tracking. Not so much tracking, but when somebody gets in a piece of apparatus, it's already in active 911, and it tells you the
They're
direction.
using cellular service. Where are the purchases of those tablets reflected?
They were funded out of Barrows.
No, actually, they were a tower purchase.
Tower?
Communications tower.
Just so I catch up with you, the health benefits we talked about a few minutes ago, is that 53102? Is that where that is? Account number?
Yes, 53102.
Okay.
That is the
Health benefit,
EMT side, that's the rescue side.
because that did go down.
52102.
52102 is the fire side, which went up.
That's up.
Okay, there you go.
Again, the fire increase is a function of, transitioning from single to family.
I got it, yep. Okay, I see that. Mary's had her hand up for a while. Yes?
So there's an easy way to look at this, is that we're essentially just giving a lump sum of money to fire and rescue, and you as the board, I would think that you would be deciding what that comfortable number is for the town, what kind of a percent increase you're looking for, and you choose that number. We can't painstakingly go through all these lines and say, well, this is an increase and this is a decrease, and you have no idea what they need over there, what they do, how it all works. You just have no idea, really. And honestly, it's a single number in our budget. So do you want a 2% increase? Do you want a 10% increase? Do you want a 6% increase? Whatever it is, then it is up to them to, if it's less than what they wanted, then they're gonna have to go in there into different lines, and if they wanna keep the payroll, and they need to keep the payroll where it is, then they're gonna have to fine tune some other areas, but really, it's a single line in our budget, and it is a lump sum donation. So,
I was curious about the audit fees, 51020. Why did that go up 1,100?
It's the third year, well, that will be the fourth year of our relationship.
Good question.
The audit number, why did that go up?
It went up.
Well,
What?
it's the fourth year of what was originally a 3-year relationship.
And it increases every year?
Actually, it was modest the first 2 years, and they realized the amount of time that is being invested, the amount of time they spend on site.
So ours, we were doing less and less.
No.
The first 2 years, we put a lot of work in
Okay.
and had to do a lot of corrections. But yours is getting more onerous?
Not so much that it's more onerous, but there's just more to look at. I mean, there's requirements now by the state of Vermont. There was legislation passed. They need to tie out the patient billing to make sure that we're paying our fair share to that 3.3% mandate.
And who does the auditing?
Tappan and Huckabee, they have offices up in Burlington and down in Richards. And when we put it out to bid last time, they were significantly lower than the others that are in the nonprofit world.
That being said, I know Patrice and I did discuss that for the next audit year, that we would most likely do some additional quotes.
And then the only other question I had was line 53020. It looks like a, I don't know. We didn't approve anything last year. Intercept fees to other agencies, 53020.
It's one of those items that we don't budget because we don't know how frequently we will be requesting intercept fees from other services.
And this year you're proposing $1,000.
And if you look at the last 2 years of actuals, Matt, it was 1,800 in FY16, and it was 700 last year, so.
So you're planning on that it will happen
It's
again
out
this
there,
year?
yeah, and it's just something that, just so that it's there.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
I have a question, just looking at, Mary, the total package. So I'm on the capital reserve fund. So just in your plan, that's the bigger spreadsheet here. So in your plan, is that the am I reading this right, $120,000 for the capital reserve fund? You know, you have the bonds to pay off.
The same deposits would be going into the reserve fund. What we looked at changing, there was 2 items. One was adding a system to the ambulance, so the AEMTs could provide pain management. That was minimal at about $5,000.
$4,700.
$5,000 roughly.
4790.
Yeah. And the other change was it didn't change the bottom line after talking to the personnel. Instead of doing the air packs over 2 years where we've got a training issue, we're not asking for any more money in the fund. We're asking just to do it in 1 year.
That's a 200,000 number.
Take a quick step back on the air packs. I mean, we've made a very good faith effort over each of the last 3 years to try to get a grant. That's not been forthcoming. We have, as it stands now, we have 7 air packs that are out of service. We have 15 that are functional. The newest, correct me if I'm wrong, Dick, but the newest ones, we actually acquired in 2006. And they were
acquired them in 2006, but they were used when we purchased them.
We also have a significant problem with the compressor system in the station, to try to, get the tanks back to where they need to be in terms of functional. It takes far too long to do that than it should in the course of the day. It's not efficient. So I mean, we feel like, and Dick's point is a good one. In order to be able to do real training, you need to have enough packs available to be able to train as many people as possible at the same time. So the thought was to go instead of 100,000 spread over 2 years, 100 and 100. We thought that it made more sense to just go ahead and try to acquire all of the new packs all at once, and as well as the new charging system within the station. So,
The history behind this, I know we've talked before on the air packs in the last 3 years. We started the grant process trying to purchase them, and we put money in the capital fund for bottles, but we've held off on that until we decide on the type of air packs, only because of an NFPA ruling that says, even though the bottle's made by the same company, if it doesn't have the stamp of the pack manufacturer on it, I'm not supposed to run it in my air pack as a first due bottle. So that's why we've held off on the 25. We would do that when we picked the air packs, whichever, and we've looked at 3 or 4 different types right now. Price is not a big variance in them because I know I can beat them all down to what they sell them for at the grants, especially when you're doing a package like this. We have as he was saying, we started with the original grant. I believe we tried for over 240, and over the years we've cut it back to trying to get at least part of it funded on the grant process. We have had no luck with that. So without changing the numbers we put in there, when we originally put those numbers in there, me and Chris were putting them in and spreading them out because we didn't know where the money in the fund was going to be at the particular time. Because when we put these in there, we were looking at the age of the packs back probably in 2006 when we got the replacements. Those were after Saputo, and the insurance company replaced a good share of them. Some of the air packs we have go back to 99. There's definite maintenance issues with them. And when we replace them, what we're also gonna do to bring us up to current codes and everything, every firefighter is gonna have to be fit tested and have his own mask. Right now, I can grab a pack on the truck, and if it's got the wrong size mask on it, I'm gonna lose air. There are certain people, their faces, they don't fit the same. So everyone's supposed to be fit tested every year. We are not doing that at this point. We need to do that.
I have a couple of
Okay.
financial questions. Mary, the 120,000 that's in here for the capital fund, that's a separate line from,
Additional to the budget request.
that's an addition.
Yes.
So the actual request, town appropriation, now I'm on the top, for the new budget you're proposing, 669,000, that's an increase to the taxpayers of 9.4%, right? Is that right? So is it- huh?
7.92, right?
No, on the top. So this is what the actual, because there's revenues that come in. So the town appropriation is going from 611,812 to 669,324. That says the cost to the taxpayer is now almost 9.5%, 9.4%.
That's correct.
That's pretty significant.
And just like everyone else, the biggest driving part of that are the wages and healthcare. It's the same thing that drives over here with your healthcare costs, and unfortunately, with the political climate, we have no idea where that's going either.
So, I mean, that's the largest increase we've seen in quite a while. And the health care that you pointed out is up on the EMT side, 3,500, and the health care on the other side was not that much money. I mean, it's not that it isn't a big expense, but, so that's up 8,000 for fire and rescue, and the health care for EMT is up, that's actually down. That's actually down. So healthcare overall has grown about $5,000. Do you see what I'm?
That's because we're anticipating transitioning from the blues to MVP. Otherwise, it'd be another $4,000 to $5,000 on top of that.
$8,400, right?
Well, so if you look at the fire health,
52102,
I have the increase is 8,450.
right?
And then I have for EMT, it's a reduction because they're changing, it's 3,478.
I see.
So you subtract one to the other, it's
That's
about a
about-
5,000 increase overall in health.
So that's like about 10% of the increase for the request. It's
Well, that's
about
what I was leading up to.
$57,000 increase.
So, yeah, it's a 50,
57,512.
And again, if you look at it, the rest of that is mostly the wage.
well, the increase to the taxpayer is 54,597,
597.
of which 10% is the healthcare. Yes, Mary?
So if you're looking at the spreadsheet and from FY16 to the FY19 proposed budget, the wages have gone up like 30%. Even the budget increase last year from 557, 215 to 611, 812, that was over 9% increase. So again, you choose a number that you're comfortable with. Clearly, the payroll is the huge expense. So if your payroll is that big of an expense and the town says, we can bear to this much expense, there are other line items here that are going to either have to be paid with in a different way, or they're going to have to decrease. You just have to find a number that you're comfortable with.
I mean, taking that point of view, I mean, as a target, where it's 9.4% increase to the taxpayer, I mean, as a target, it seems to me 5% is very reasonable. And you're almost double that. And so what Mary is saying is, we challenge you to make that growth 5%, not this 9.4%. It just, and if that means reducing paramedic from 7 to 6, maybe that's an answer. I mean, we're not getting negative comments about the work that you're providing. We're getting positive comments. Yet we're gonna have the tilting point here pretty quickly with these 10% increases.
Well, one thing you don't see in this is, if you're going to talk about insurance and compare insurance, if you were going to say that the people, the full-time people and their families at the fire department deserve the same coverage that we pay for the library and all the townspeople,
Yeah.
it would be a $60,000 increase, approximately. It's hard to tell because you change. So the decisions are made to keep prices low. It's kind of like what they don't do is raise the price to put it on sale.
But don't you think we're reaching the tipping point?
Well, do you think it's appropriate that the people there don't get the same insurance they do? You pay more insurance for someone that checks in your book than you do for someone that shows up to pull you out of a house. So,
Our medical insurance assumptions assume a 70-30 split. The fire department, CVFRS assumes 70% of the cost. That's for a family. The family assumes 30%.
and there's no HRA involved either, so the whole deductible is paid by the individual.
Valid point.
That's what I'm talking about, may not be what you're talking about. If you want to compare everything and say what the town's going to support, maybe they should say, well, maybe we should pay everybody the same. Maybe we should take benefits away from town people to save that money as opposed to giving it to somebody else. It's money out of the whole pot, as you like to say, but it's the entire town's pot. It's for everything that the town is in the town's budget. And what's the target for our wage increase? We don't have the option to say, well, we're going to lower our wages, because that's the biggest increase in this is the payroll and the insurance.
Yeah.
When we look at our payroll, we pretend that the benefits don't exist. When we look at the library budget, we pretend their benefits don't exist. They don't show us that information. They don't for any of the individual budgets. We lump it all into one big number so no one can tell what it is.
All right.
I think another piece that maybe is catching up in the budget is that we have been paying out this amount for payroll. It's not a new expense. It's just we've gone either over budget or taken the money from another place. So we're reflecting what it's costing in the line. And you're also seeing a little bit of a shift from the fact that every shift is covered predominantly by 2 paid individuals and supplemented with volunteers that enable a second ambulance to be in service if one goes out on calls. In certain cases, when we can, and we're trying very hard, we will take our senior volunteers and put them on with 1 paid person only, because we can drive and we can perform the duties that we need to do without bringing on another paid person for that shift. So our volunteer rescue group is very dedicated to trying to use our senior volunteers in that way. We have a huge influx of new volunteers, but they are not at the point where they can be a second on an ambulance. We need two fully certified, fully capable driving, providing individuals.
And for years, when we've under budgeted that payroll line, we had enough senior people that
Yeah.
they were actually covering enough shifts that was helping make the payroll. Now with the lower number of volunteers that can cover these shifts, if you want the shifts covered, unfortunately, you have to hire someone. And since everyone in the county is in the same boat, that's a driving force of the wages.
So Robert, you had your hand up?
My comment is that we're at a level that we can't sustain
So my thought is to Richard and Meg, how do you solve a problem? You can't keep passing it on every year to the taxpayers. Somebody's gonna have to be creative at a certain point. I don't have the answer for it. Because years ago, we went to EMTs because we had to. But since that point, we have no volunteers left.
And we're not alone with that, though.
I understand that part, not being alone. But at 9.6%, maybe we can't afford everything we're buying. So at some point here, the legislative body ahead of you has to make decisions. And at 9.6% in 2017 or 18 or 19 budget, whatever you're looking at here, you gotta make choices. And we can't keep buying everything.
And I think that's where that poll is gonna come in.
What poll's gonna come in?
Well, you came in a little late, Bunny, so you missed us
I
talking.
did, I missed a whole bunch of this stuff.
We were
But
talking about a
It's
poll
still
within the community.
9.6%, Richard.
Yeah, a poll within the community to see what level of service they were looking to bear at the paramedic level, or if they wanted to back it down, or if they wanted to increase it after they knew what their nickel was buying.
So what's the consensus of the board here?
I have a question
Yeah.
for everybody and Patrice had asked maybe to reflect on it. A significant part of the increase is EMT payroll. And the EMT payroll number increase for option C, remember, option C is no difference in staffing. Yet the budget is up $28,000. So of the $57,000 total expense increase, half of it is the EMT budget.
Right.
And that line item, 53,101,
Yep.
28,717 are payments that were made last year, payments that had been made in the past, as I understand it, but were never budgeted for. This is the first year, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrice, where we're actually putting this expected expense that you're never going to pay because you've always paid it on the budget. And, take $28,000 out of this $57,000 increase, and, you're down to the numbers that you guys are talking about.
Well, you take half, well,
Which fund was it coming out of, if it wasn't out of a?
yeah, how did you pay for it?
I'm going to defer to Patrice on that.
We had negative
Living
spending.
here in Cincinnati.
We were saying a deficit spent, but
And it came out of the surplus from the
Right.
3 years ago. So it didn't come from any of the funds. I didn't hear that. It came out of the surplus that's allowable in the MOA from 3 years ago. Their deficit spending of the last 2 years on their operation expenses.
oh, what do you, what was this? That's a good question. What is your status of the conclusion of the fiscal year that we just completed? Were you on or under, income revenue? Is there a surplus?
No, there's no surplus.
So you came out net neutral? Because what you're saying is,
Pretty close, yeah, if I remember right. I don't have
Okay.
that number in front of me. Yeah.
-9.
-9, and then the year budget we're looking at now is a year later, so,
No.
okay.
Well, the current year.
Well, you don't have results yet, you're only 4 months in the current year, but the last year,
But we
then
know what we budgeted, and what we didn't budget is our items that we've been talking about, that
I didn't hear you.
we have been paying, but have not been budgeted, and those are holiday OT pay. That is for the per diems that were the 6 holidays that we
right,
celebrate or get recognized over at Shore Fire and Rescue. It also includes 8 hours of PTO holiday pay for our full-time staff.
So when you
Again,
say,
those are items that we've been paying, but we never budgeted.
but are you giving paid holidays to per diems?
They're working a holiday, yes.
If
They
they're
get paid-
working a
They
holiday?
get paid time and a half if they're working. That's why it's called holiday OT.
Well, of holiday overtime, but you're not giving a benefit
No, the only people that get paid holiday
for the full-time employees.
permanent staff.
Right, got it.
This is just a differential because they're working on a holiday.
Right.
I got that, yeah. So Tom, what do you think in this discussion? I mean,
Well, you know, it's a little bit tricky to follow some of what's being said from the first row. But, you know, we put forth option C for the same reasons that you guys are, you know, commenting on as there are people in the audience, that we have the same level of concern about, you know, substantial double-digit increases and things like that. We just didn't feel like that was a number that we were comfortable putting forth. So we went from A to B to C. I feel like we made a big effort. A willingness to change insurance, I don't know of anybody else that's doing that. So I mean, I think that shows just how focused we are on trying to get this to a reasonable number. I think to answer, and we may be getting ahead of ourselves, but the solutions I think over time are going to come from the towns when they talk about the possibility of regionalizing rescue. You know, I mean, I attended the District 3 rescue meeting. You know, it's my first experience with that. It was just about 2 weeks ago up at UVM Hospital. And there will come a time, I think, where the towns reach that tipping point that you've referred to, and that's going to be strongly on the table for consideration, just like it occurred in the school district. So to Bunny's question and point, somebody's got to get creative. That may be part of the creativity, but that's not this year. It's not happening this year. For the same reasons that school districts took so long to come along to that point. It's just human nature not to go that way, but eventually that's probably going to be part of the solution going forward. But it's obviously not going to happen this year. And the final thing is we cannot continue to send people out with these rather antique breathing apparatus. We can't do it anymore. It's too old. Our stuff is not compatible with our other mutual aid towns. I mean, there's just so many reasons we need to address that problem. And it isn't fair. It isn't safe to the good people that volunteer, to put those things on in the first place. So I mean, I would urge you folks to support option C and let us move forward with the capital reserve expenditures as well. So those are my thoughts.
Let me ask you one other question. You explained the change in the health insurance which affected the EMT. But that doesn't appear to be a change on the paper we're looking at for the fire benefit. Have you done the same with fire?
What has happened,
Yeah,
and we
it would be
absorb
one
that.
plan for all. One plan for all. Transitioning from the blues to MVP for all. The difference is, and Patrice can chime in if she feels the need to, but the difference again is you're adding a family to where it was just a single individual before. And as I said, the costs, had we stayed with Blue Cross Blue Shield, it would be, I don't know, another $5,000, something in that vicinity, on top of what we're talking about here. So.
I just have one more question. It might be an oversight, or maybe it was purposeful. Line workers' comp premium. Last year, the actual was $17,000 and was budgeted at $12,500. Why are you budgeting $12,500 again?
It's whatever the mix is. So it's based upon our experience rate and the value of, it's all driven by your wages. So every year we assume $25,000 worth of the member incentive and what that mix is going to be across fire or rescue. Fire has a lot higher premium number and an experience rate. So,
I guess my question is, why aren't you budgeting for something similar to last year's actual? It's $5,000 less than last year.
but it's the line below, you gotta combine the two of them together.
That's up 1,200. The line below, meaning EMT,
Mhm.
that's a 1,200 increase. And work,
You're- Are
39.
you looking at last year's actual or the current year's budget?
F17 approved and 17 actual is approved for both was 4,500 and actual was 38, almost 39. And then this year, you're budgeting for 38.
If you
So
go down to 53017 now,
yep,
FY17 audited actual, and again, that's still preliminary, it was at 21 and we're budgeting 26.
right, that's
Right.
6,400
And
less,
so
6,300 less.
the other difference on the upside is, so the total workers' comp premium is the same.
It's about the
It's
same.
just where it's split
Where you
between
divided it.
departments.
Yeah.
And that's where we're making an assumption on where the.
And that was to offset some of the percent increase in the fire side. You're just dividing it differently.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And what we'll find out is when our volunteers actually get paid out their member incentive, we'll know how much of that is on fire and rescue.
For the incentives, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments from anybody from the board?
No, it was informative.
Okay.
Do we have action steps?
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, one thing I think you should also keep in mind, Lane, is that there are uncontrollables in this budget. So 3.3% of all of our revenue, with the exception of the appropriation, is a tax that we have to pay to the state of Vermont.
I remember that.
So
from-
that's why that it's a 9.4% increase on the appropriation, because that's net of the 3.3%.
I remember that from
So
last
if we
year.
were not at that situation of having to pay 3.3% to the state of Vermont, our ask from the town would be an increase in equal to what our operating budget increase is.
I mean, it's no action, I just think we're at risk with the taxpayers. That's, I support you guys. I know you're doing a good job, but it's gonna happen. One of these years, they're gonna just say, it's just grown too much. And regionalization, we looked at it a few years ago. It's a tough thing to get everybody together to agree to it. I mean, it's like impossible.
It saves the schools, but it's the one thing that's going to save on healthcare
If-
in the future. But the downside with regionalization, they might pull a county service and say, well, we'll move the ambulance from Charlotte to Heinsberg because Heinsberg's a busier service. Now the people of Charlotte are paying to have their ambulance in Heinsberg, not as much because it's regionalized, but where do you want your ambulance coming out of?
Or if somebody's budget is turned down, that'll have a major motivating factor too. So, I mean, I don't have any action, I just like to challenge as much as possible, but you guys have answers.
We've challenged in-house again and again and again. That's why there's 3 different ones there. If you look at the other line items that are controllable, there are very few increases, and those are well-backed, why they're there, and they're pennies on the dollar compared to the rest of what's here.
Ella, you have your hand up?
Yeah. I have been sitting in on the fire rescue board meetings, as you know. I'm certainly familiar with the town board and their approaches to the budget. And I wanted to emphasize, I guess, what Dick just said, in that sitting with the fire rescue people and watching them go through their budget. And it's been very thorough and very conscientious in terms of these increases. I think that there's not much price to cut there.
Yep.
My second point is, this is back to what Fritz was alluding to, and Mary too. This is, the rate that the taxpayers pay includes the fire, the big piece that goes to fire and rescue. But the total of those is what drives the tax rate. And if we look at something like health insurance, my challenge to you is, did you go out to bid? Did you look at a possible decrease in what the town pays for town employees for health insurance? If that went down, because there's so many more employees, that would be a big reduction and would affect the tax rate. So I think we have to look at the whole picture.
Thank you.
I spent 4 or 5 hours over the course of 3 days on the phone with MVP. In part because Kevin has to live over in Maine and make it interesting for us. But it was an excellent opportunity to kind of do the due diligence that we needed to do on it, and I'm glad he kind of helped us along those lines. So anyway, Kevin, so thank you in a roundabout way, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Tom. I'll push the off button. Hope you make it home tomorrow.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you. We're almost done. We have a couple of quickies here. The Thompson's Point lease, 46, renew 20-year lease. Do you have the originals?
Yeah, it's just it's a renewal.
Oh, yeah. Let's quiet down, everybody. We're still meeting here. Hey, Bunny, I have a meeting going on.
Wait, I had my hand up.
Okay, let's have order, please.
What about a unified budget for fire rescue?
Okay, we're on to the Thompson Point lease 46. What did you say to me, Dean, on this?
This is a renewal, so there's just one document, and it's the current leaseholder is renewing for 20 years.
So it's just an expired lease, no changes?
No changes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve Lot 46 at 496 Flat Rock Road, new 20-year lease? Family's name is Thomas Trainer.
I move to approve Thompson's Point lease for lot 46 at 496 Flat Rock Road to renew a 20-year lease to Thomas D. Trainer and approve the select board chair to sign.
Is that seconded? Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. And we have another lease.
Or drill a well.
Right. Oh, it's an authorization to drill a well. How we handled those in the past? Is
So, because it's town land, the leaseholder is supposed to ask the select board prior to drilling, and they have, well, we received input from Steve Williams, who's the operator of the wastewater system, and he supports putting a well here because the water coming from the lake is very silty, and we have meters on the water system in order to, that's how we charge for the wastewater use. So we're basically authorizing them to drill a well.
Has this been run by to make sure it's in compliance with setbacks from the independent septic systems that are on Lanes Lane?
It's in the area of Lanes Lane where it's served by the town's wastewater system. The very end of Lanes Lane is already on the town's wastewater system, so.
The nearest septic system on Lanes Lane is far enough away.
Sorry?
The nearest septic system on Lanes Lane is far enough away?
Yes.
Is there a map that shows, like, when you do the,
Isolation distance? They did not do that. You typically, the farthest isolation distance would be 200 feet.
the state requires that for a permit? I think we should require that of any applicant, because I don't want to,
Have our own town liable for putting someone's drinking
that
water
doesn't
close
meet
to a
state
septic.
setbacks.
Right, that's my only concern or question.
Yeah, I agree. There should be some document that we see that shows where the, what's the name of that?
Now, if everyone on Lanes Lane was on the town septic, I
wouldn't
think it would be a moot. but-
Which property is this?
It's all the way at the end. Past Chris Davis, you've been to Chris Davis's recently?
Oh, it's the one right on the lake there.
Yep,
I know where you mean. There's a bunch of construction going on there
Yep.
right now.
it's in the woods, yep.
So the point you guys have been making is make sure it meets what state?
Yeah, isolation distance for the well to other things.
But that is already on the septic system. It should be.
But the neighbors are not yet.
The
So I
neighbors
just want to
aren't.
make sure it's far enough from the neighbor's septic.
It's
system,
quite a
the
distance from,
closest neighbors.
Well, then, yeah,
Yeah,
as long as
it
it's,
is.
it probably is just fine, but it should be a document that shows that, because that's what the state requires when you put a well in for your house. You have to show your overlap with the neighbor's septic and the neighbor's well and all
So
that.
that would that be something we'd authorize, that we would require
Yeah,
before
The
we
applicant.
authorize the,
yeah, or
Drilling.
authorize it now. upon
Authorize it
condition.
subject to meeting state-required
Setbacks.
setback.
Okay.
Isolation distances, or evidence that it meets state.
submitting
Wide.
information.
Yeah, that,
Is that the request for it?
Yeah.
Someone else say that?
So is that good with you, Dean? We'll prove it pending
Yeah,
confirmation.
I take it you're not necessarily meaning a licensed designer has to do a design, but perhaps the well driller could do a
Google
measurement.
map thing, you know, you just have
What's
to, it just, you can almost do that on the map they provided,
Right.
you know, just identify where the
Yep.
neighbor's stuff is and draw the circle around it.
Yep.
I mean, that's,
Okay. So you want to do it that way? Make a motion to approve this subject to the appropriate setback?
I'll make a motion to approve the well drilling on Thompson's Point Lot 134 at 351 Lanes Lane, subject to evidence of compliance with state isolation distances to adjacent wells and septic systems.
Second,
Second. Any questions on this topic?
and approve the chair to friendly amendment.
Sure.
to sign.
Okay.
Looks like it.
No questions on this topic? All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Fine.
Select board updates?
I got a second generator quote, $10,000 less than the first one. So now we're down to 4,000 for
And that generator's for what location?
the town hall and the senior center.
So two separate ones.
Senior center because it would be the first emergency shelter. The town hall to be a second emergency shelter and to operate the sewer system for which the first emergency shelter would use. So, and Dean has looked into grants from the state and there,
So far, nothing yet.
nothing out there, so. I don't know, maybe this would be a town discussion thing at budget time.
Rather than just,
Yeah, I mean, the
Put it
Boy
in.
Scout in me says be prepared and spend the money, but it's not my money.
any other updates? I should let you know that at the senior center, there's interview in process to replace, to have a new senior center director. And tomorrow, there's a meeting with the two finalists. So it's my expectation there'll be a recommendation for a replacement. So that process is working smoothly.
They get a lot of applicants.
I'm guessing 10 or 12. We've interviewed 6, and there are 2 finalists of the 6. Any other updates? Okay, Robert, you have your hand up?
Yep, I've had it up for quite a while. You moved through multiple subjects. My question was, we had a unified budget process years ago. None of you, maybe 1 or 2 of you were here then, but all of a sudden, the unified budget is never, when I ask a question, they tell me to ask Tom. Tom, I don't know who Tom is. So I'm gonna ask the legislative body, what happened to unified budget? And don't blow smoke up my ass, because I don't wanna hear all the dumb stories. I wanna hear what happened. Where is it?
In my time, I don't know what a unified budget is.
That's the easy
Can
way
you
out.
answer that? Can you answer
Sorry?
that? Can you answer that?
I mean, I can say what a unified budget is. It's showing all the revenue streams from the tower and their special funds.
Oh, you're talking about fire and rescue?
Yeah,
Oh.
because you didn't answer my hand when I had it up back then. When those individuals were here, maybe somebody could answer that.
Well, they report, what's your question? They report on what their status of the funds.
Yeah, they do. Before, we talked about a unified budget where all the money was on the table and you got to pick where it went. In the last couple of years, that's been dropped right off the table. Where is it now? Still off the table.
I think that's correct.
But how did it happen? Fritz, can you help me with that one?
So what you want to see is,
I want to see the revenue stream from fire and rescue.
okay.
I want to
You
see,
get that every quarter.
huh?
You get that every quarter.
Fritz, that's easy answer. Where does that money go and how does it help the taxpayers a lot?
You get that every quarter too.
No, I don't.
Well, then
Because now we're down
you
to
get a
this
report
quarter.
that shows.
Fritz, we're at this quarter now and there's no discussion of revenue stream,
Let me answer the question.
okay?
You get every quarter a list of all of the balances in the special accounts. You get income that is added to those depending on the count, and you
Yep.
see the expenses for which those are spent.
Yes?
That is exactly, that's the income stream, revenue and expense. What else do you want to see?
Well, I'd like to see how the revenue stream helps the taxpayers reduce their budget, period.
It tells you
It doesn't.
what the revenue was and what it was spent on. Like, let's think of something here.
let's
Like he was
let it
talking
lie.
about the NOS
Fritz,
payment. Do you need an explanation of why the item is expensed, benefits the town? What is the benefit of,
when I look at the tower fund, when I look at different options of money that flow in, I don't see how that stream of money helps the taxpayers.
well, you have to look at the expense, and when it tells you
It
what
looks
the,
like to me, they spend money on top of the money.
it's audited. It shows how much comes in and how much it is spent and what it is spent on. It's presented on a quarterly basis
That,
in English.
in English, it does not show that. It shows
It
that
does.
money has been spent over a period of time, and how do you come up with how the money is spent?
I'll give you a personal
period of
tutorial,
time.
Robert.
So why don't you guys work it offline? He's answered your question. Work it offline then, if you've got,
Yeah, just
You
take
know,
the quarterly
You're looking
report.
at a budget right now. You were just
I
speaking about a budget for an upcoming fiscal year. It did not have a unified budget that showed the income stream.
Well, yeah, because
No,
the
it
town
did not.
income, the town, you saw the budget for the operating expenses
I did.
for that portion of the budget. And you want to see what the special funds,
Yes. How do they offset the budget?
that comes quarterly. The stuff that's spent out of the special funds would not be,
It doesn't come quarterly, it comes now.
Would not
when
be
you're doing a budget.
if it came out of the special funds, it won't come out of the budget. You want to know what the benefit is, if the special funds weren't there, those things would have to be added to the budget. I
Fritz,
don't understand how they,
we're working on a forward budget. I want to see how the income stream from the different funds benefits the taxpayers, and I want to see it happen at the legislative table, which I'm looking at right now. I don't want it to happen quarterly where nobody knows about it. Where Mr. Spear doesn't know about it, Mr. Tenney doesn't know about it, and President don't know about it. I want to see it now.
you guys are at the quarterly meetings, aren't you?
In the MOA, that is what was proposed. You're missing a whole point here. This is something that happened years ago. You came on the board, you inherited this. I want to see the goddamn stream. I don't want a story about next quarter or 3 quarters down the road. I want it now. Because this is the time, and you're not gonna put me off till town meeting or July 1st or all that crap. I can tell you what happened to it, if you wanna hear it.
Do you want to do it now, or?
Well, does anybody else want to see it? I'll do it with Robert when we're done here.
No, I don't wanna hear about that. I wanna hear how it's gonna help the taxpayers in the future. And I wanna see, from the day the MOA was signed, when it should have been signed, I wanna see the answers. You can tell most people this story, Fritz. They'll believe you. I wanna see the actuals.
You see him. I don't know what else to tell you.
No, there's nothing to tell me because it hasn't happened. It just went away.
Nope,
It did.
did not.
It did too.
Okay, we tried to answer your question.
No, you haven't answered it.
Well, we made an attempt.
The problem is here, you just keep putting me off and putting me off, and the real problem here is that you guys are gonna have to deal with it. Mr. Krasno understands it, Mr. Tenney understands it, Ms. Spear understands it. I'm not sure about the other 2 guys that understand it. I just wanna hear where we're gonna go with this subject. Because we've talked about it repeatedly, and it just goes, and if I wasn't here tonight, there wouldn't be any discussion.
Well, we're gonna be talking about this again. Maybe we do a little more homework till the next meeting. When we,
The MOA should have been redone 2 years ago. It was a poor document when it was done. John Owen says, I'll move the subject.
I think even Tom talked about that, though, that the MOA does need to be updated on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, we're supposed to look at it every other year. It's in the MO.
You were supposed to look at it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you,
We
Wayne,
haven't
were the
done
ones that said it was nothing wrong with it.
Well, we need to look at it. I think there is a requirement to review. We should sit with Fire and Rescue, look at the MOA, maybe as our rep, Fritz, and see if there are any changes, then come back to the board. The one thing that I don't believe was fixed was the surplus issue. I don't think that was ever fixed. We had it all resolved, but then the words never got changed. Mary sat with our auditor, we sat with their auditor, and I don't believe the words ever got changed.
The auditors.
The 2 auditors,
2 years ago.
2 years ago. This is on
Uh, Uh,
the.
think in practice, it's been fixed, it's just.
Well, yeah, it's a moot point because it hasn't been a
There haven't
surplus,
been any surpluses, that's right.
but
It was a discussion to fix it. Nothing has happened.
Okay, point well taken. You're supposed, I believe the words are, it should be looked at every 2 years, and we haven't. We looked at it about 2 years ago, but it became a moot point. The one issue that we brought up, there was no dissatisfaction with the other issues.
And I understand the issue you folks have, because I've been there before. You have to balance everything to make it all work. But I don't think you guys have, and I don't just mean you 5 people. I think it's a wider range than that, have got to do due diligence on this subject. And it's a tough subject, because I never had the solution to having, when you needed EMTs, you needed somebody to come when you called. But it's still a tough problem, and you gotta deal with it. And what I saw earlier when I got here this evening was you just passed off.
So here's your answer, Robert. Tower account, this is the June 30th, 2017. Beginning balance, $102,800. Income of $29,000 change. Interest income, $300 and change. Expenses, Vermont UBI taxes, federal taxes, bank charges, capital acquisitions, $90.
Yeah, and where did the money come from?
Okay. Donations, 30, is that a donation?
How much was donations? 3,000.
This one wasn't a donation. This one was tower income, $29,500 and $959.74.
So it's the rental for the tower from the,
No.
That's the funds invested,
funds invested, okay.
yes. Vermont changed their trust rules, which allows different, more profitable funds.
Chris, years ago, fire and rescue expended X number of dollars toward the budget to offset the cost of it. I believe it was 10%, but maybe it was 15. And since then, it's been 0.
You can add all these numbers together in one lump, and then it would be the unified budget that you asked for.
Fritz,
I'd have to add 1,
You know
2,
what,
3,
to
4.
Robert's point, 3 years ago, they put $10,000 in, to Robert's point, to support the budget.
Yes,
And then the next year, which is 2 years ago, they took it out.
this number.
What, I mean, it's a valid point. I mean, with
well,
these
the
kinds of
question was,
increases.
what is the benefit to the taxpayers? If you use it to operate it,
Fritz,
then the
this is
things that
point.
these are spent for get purchased through the operating budget.
Oh, I mean, if you
Or the
did,
capital. Fritz, you're missing
Yeah.
the goddamn point. The point was. that they
I know
were putting
exactly
money
what your
into it,
point is,
and-
Robert.
No, you're missing the point, Fritz. They put money in the operating budget. The voters got to vote on it. The legislative body got to talk about it, if they wanted to. But now it's a 0 number. So what are you talking about when you're talking about zeros? Nothing. Because it's not an option for you to make decisions. I voted for you to make decisions. And some of the decisions are not easy. They never were, and they're not gonna be in the future. But there were still decisions, Fritz, that you made, Kerry made, Elaine made, and Frank made, and Krasner made. But you gotta make those decisions. Just rolling over and say, oh, don't worry about it, isn't a decision.
So, what do you want done?
What I would like to see done is, I'd like to see all the income on the table. I think Ms. Spear would like that. I even think the guy in the middle would like that. And he flip-flops a lot on me in the past, but I think he would like to see that. And I think he'd like to be able to make decisions on how that $1 million is spent on fire and rescue in this town. But, Fritz, if it's not an option to talk about, what are we talking about? Nothing.
So what you want to do is to have the
I wanna see
taxpayers,
all the income
you
on
want the
one side.
taxpayers to
We
determine,
call it the any bucket. And then I want to see the ugly bucket.
let him
Whatever.
speak.
I give up.
Okay,
No, you don't gotta get it. I'll stop talking for you.
okay, we gotta move on.
No, that's exactly the
You can't
problem.
give up,
We
Robert.
always move on.
Come on.
In the middle of a debate.
Well, we've got your message. My question is,
Robert, I think what he wants is the taxpayers to determine how the money in the special funds is spent.
well, is the special, for you, Fritz, is the special funds growing? I mean, could they make they made a contribution not that long ago, and then all of a sudden, John Snow's the president, and he said, no more.
Last year, they bought a boat. So
Right.
Robert wants to know what the advantage to the town people are as well. Okay, instead of putting a boat on the capital fund list to replace the old one, it was paid for by somebody else. Now, you could have put that on the capital funds and lined it up with everything else.
I want the voters to have that choice. Remember what you told me when you got down, Reds?
Okay, we gotta move on.
Took 3 times to buy the right one.
Good inputs. We have 2 more things to do. We need to do the minutes of November 13th. I was absent. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of November 13th from you folks?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 13th as may be amended.
Just 2 small ones, line 104.
Did you second it, somebody?
Second.
Thank you, okay. 104, yeah.
It's New England grassroots is one word. And then environmental fund.
Environmental fund.
No, then grant match. But the name, it's NEGF is the name of the fund. And then line 171, opioid is missing an I.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye. I don't vote. Aye, I'm abstaining. The next minutes are November 20th. Fritz was absent.
Motion to approve the minutes of November 20th, 2017 as amended.
Okay. Okay, these are pretty short, just a discussion of what we continued tonight. I don't have any changes. Anybody else? All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more business to be brought up before the board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So our next meeting, did you have a draft in here? Our next meeting is the 11th?
December 11th and then December 18th.
Okay. And what's the main, we're having a hearing
There's
on
2
the,
items, yep, there's budget review and a town plan public hearing at 7
Okay.
o'clock.
okay.
I'm not really 100% happy with the town plan.
Come to the hearing.
I was planning on it. It can still be changed.